Hello, welcome to the live stream. It is March 1st, 2017. My name is Dana Morningstar, and this is the weekly question and answer live stream hangout session that I do. And so welcome. And so while we're waiting for people to hop on, oops, I have this labeled wrong. Venice is here, welcome. If you're new here, just so you know, there's no such thing as a bad question or a dumb question or any of that. So feel free to ask, as long as it's a sincere question. So if you're a troll, like no trollish questions, okay? So any sincere questions are warmly welcomed. Peter is here, or Patar is here, AF Pride, Shara, Evie, hello. Welcome. So also too, before I forget, hello Lucy, Dominique, lots of people are, Dominique all the way from Belgium. Wow, very cool. So all of those of you that have joined in listening to the podcast, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been a wild ride for the past 2 weeks, just riding that learning curve and trying to figure out podcasting and all that, and I still have a long way to go, but I appreciate everybody's patience and everybody's support, and it's just been awesome. And so podcast is going great, and connecting with lots of people, lots of you guys on Facebook, which has been really fun. It's fun like bumping into people around the internet. Like I don't know why I get such a kick out of that, but I do. So it's fun. So thank you guys for everything. It's just cool. So let's see. Diana's here. AF Pride says, hey Dana, do you find it is impossible or very difficult to get people to understand what it is like dealing with narcissistic abuse unless they have been through it themselves? Oh, totally. Because it's sort of like explaining to a person how to run a marathon when they haven't run a marathon. So like you can kind of explain the logistics of it. Like, okay, this is how you pace yourself. This is how you train for it. Like this, but theory versus application, like they're just two very different things. And so people really don't understand the level of psychological manipulation until they've gone through it. And even when they've gone through it, they oftentimes don't understand it. So it's a very difficult topic. It's sort of like being in a cult and trying to explain to somebody who's never been in a cult how and why they got into a cult and why they stayed. Because to outside looking in, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But if you're in it, there's reasons why you're there. So Katie says, yes, they mostly don't understand how abusive grooming works. They want to go, but why did you take that? That's a very common thing. Like, why did you stay? Why would you let anybody treat you like that? All of it. And it's manipulation. So trying to explain to somebody what manipulation is and all of the subtleties that go around it, especially if you're the one being manipulated. So if a person's being manipulated, for them to try to be the one to explain manipulation it's just really difficult because they don't oftentimes understand it either because they've been manipulated. So there's just lots of different factors at play. Yes, thank you. Lucy says podcasts are on the website Thrive After Abuse. And you can also find me on iTunes too. You can find me across the internet pretty much. Thrive After Abuse, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, website, YouTube, just everywhere. Venice says, Dana, I'm leaving my parents soon, but since they are placed in the middle of the narcissistic spectrum, Should I go no contact? That's a decision that you're going to have to make. And so I would just encourage you to think about, what do you need to do? How much distance do you need in order to keep yourself safe and sane? Is that seeing them never? Or is that seeing them, or is that a phone call every other week? Is it a phone call every week? Is it seeing them on holidays? Is it seeing them for only, a day during the holiday? Is it seeing them for 3 hours during the holiday? Kind of where is your comfort level with that? And only you will have the right answer for something like that. I know it's not easy to go no contact when it has to do with family. So it's just you navigating your own line in that. And you'll know based on how you feel. So if you're still feeling, like you leave and like your blood pressure's way up and there's nothing enjoyable about this interaction, like you're incredibly stressed out and you're anxious and you're depressed and you're all of these feelings, then those are all signs that something needs to change, that boundaries are continuing to be crossed with you. And you can either work harder at trying to set boundaries, which doesn't really go over well with narcissistic people, especially parents, or that means you need to back up a little bit more and, possibly just change the approach, whether that means you go low contact or whether that means you go no contact. You'll know like I said, based on kind of how you feel. And once you start feeling, you can get yourself to a place where it's like you're cool, calm, and collected, where their presence in your life is enjoyable, then that's when you've found kind of that good balance there. Or at least tolerable, I should say. AF says, I feel like it's so hard to get support for this because it's so hard to explain to other people. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's hard to explain to other people, and even you can explain it all day long, but if they've never lived it, they just don't understand it, including therapists. It's this is why I encourage support groups for people, because then you're around other people that have been there, done that, and you just get that validation and clarity. So much more so than you will trying to convince other people of like what happened to you, and that it is a big deal, and that it was traumatic, and that it's more than you just like needing to move on. And you don't have to fight for your reality or your truth in a support group. Like, people are there because they know what you've gone through, because they've gone through the same thing. Christina says, if my ex told me twice he was a sociopath, is he really a sociopath? Or could he just be pretending? I escaped after abuse and many years of empty promises. Well, he sounds like a sociopath, if that's his behavior. So I would say, when somebody tells you that they're, abusive, or that they're evil, or that they're a sociopath or a psychopath, or that they have no empathy or no remorse, or that they're dangerous, or that they, these kinds of things, like these are red flags. Like, normal people don't say stuff like this. And so whether or not he's actually like been diagnosed as a sociopath, probably not. But it doesn't really, the diagnosis is secondary to his behavior. So if he's got problematic behavior, if he's using and abusing and exploiting you, if he's any one of those things, is deal breaker behavior. And yeah, so if a person tells you that they're problematic, I would believe them. Yeah, Viva says, I've described it like a cult too before. I've given up trying to make anybody understand since then. Yeah, it really is exactly, well, I'm not exactly like a cult, but it's very much like a cult. And I don't try to explain it either. I'm sure, I oftentimes wonder, like, what do a lot of my old friends think about what I'm doing in these videos. I'm sure that there's probably a lot of people out there that are like, oh, you know, they just don't even, they like can't even comprehend it. Even though at the time my life was blown apart, I couldn't articulate what had happened to me. I just, everything was so over the top. So yeah, I'm sure that they think this is all ridiculous to them. It's not something that we talk about. Even with my parents, with me doing this, my mom and I talk about it a little bit. My dad, not so much. And I still think that there's that feeling of, well, what you went through wasn't really abuse because he never hit you. So, you know, I can't, like, I don't even entertain, I don't argue my truth. Like, I don't argue my reality with other people. Like, I know what I experienced. I know it was problematic. I know that they're not going to understand it because they weren't in it. So it's just letting go of all of that and like, and just trying to move forward into people that do understand. Boz says, Dana, we can ask questions here, right? Yeah. Yep. Totally. That's what tonight is all about. And I'll do my best. I mean, my 2 cents is only my 2 cents. So I will feel, you know, I will give you my 2 cents, but other people in the chat will, and then comments after the live stream too, which I think it always helps to kind of get this wide range of feedback from people. That way you're not just limited to me and my opinion on things. It's really helpful to hear from a wide variety of people in the community because everybody comes at this with their own understanding and their own approach. And it's amazing how somebody else could say something in the way that you need to hear it, or the way that you're best able to hear it. And you're like, bingo, that's it. And so it's, yeah. Heart says, my narcissist is ignoring me, but showing me that he is going through some issues. I want to leave him, but it seems selfish to leave him during a crisis. What do I do? You leave him and you let him figure this out on his own because you're not his mother, and it is not your responsibility to fix him or to continue to bail him out. And it will feel selfish. Like, it's so crazy how mixed up we can be in all of this, where we feel so responsible for helping them, for forever helping them, no matter how cruel and abusive and manipulative they are to us. We're still willing to overlook that and help them. But there's a difference between kindness and weakness, and compassion too. Like, there's a difference between caring and caretaking. I mean, that's a better way to put it. So it's important, if you're going to care for somebody else, that you're not doing so at the expense of sacrificing yourself or putting you in harm's way. If you're in the role of caretaking another otherwise capable adult, which, believe me, narcissists are capable adults. They really, really are. They're master manipulators. They get through life using people. So it's he or she will figure it out. And, you know, you're not a caretaker. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to make yourself a priority. And I know that oftentimes feels selfish and it feels wrong for a lot of us. But when we put everybody else first, that's problematic because we can't continue to like sink ourselves in order to save other people. Like, that's really unhealthy. And that's a big lesson in all of this for us is getting back into alignment with like what are healthy boundaries, you know, what is appropriate caring. Where is that line between caring and caretaking? Where is that line kind of between, you know, compassion and codependency? Where is this line between, you know, healthy boundaries and healthy bonds and trauma bonds? And it can take a little bit. It can take not even a little bit. It can take a lot to really navigate that. And it's a forever evolving process where it was just kind of like self-exploration and talking to other people. Again, support groups can be really great for this and can help really navigate and point out, hey, this is like, you're a little off center here. Like you're really putting this other person ahead of yourself, even at the expense of yourself. And there's no honor in that. There's no value in like us martyring ourselves, us sinking ourselves in order to help them swim. Because we give and they take. And you can only do that for so long before you have nothing left to give. And frankly, before they walk away. Because they take and they take and they take and they take. It'll never be enough. And when they walk away, they'll blame you for walking away. Like it's just, they are oftentimes like a bottomless pit. And our love can't fix them. It doesn't work that way. I wish it did, but it doesn't. And frankly, I say I wish that it did. But even if it did, we would be cheating them out of the opportunity of like having their self-growth, like their personal growth. Because that's how personal growth happens. It happens through the trials and tribulations of life and building healthy self-esteem, which is something they don't have. Like healthy self-esteem comes from figuring things out in life and building confidence and realizing that you actually, you can do this and move forward and you can be okay. Yes, AJ, positive vibes are sent to you. For sure. Let's see, Venice says, okay, what about my siblings who normalize my parents' abusive behavior? And this too goes back to paying attention to, or not even paying attention, but like really embracing, I guess, what we have control over. Like we don't have control over other people. There's actually a lot of freedom that comes from really realizing that. Like you don't have control over your parents or your siblings or your friends or your neighbors or your coworkers or any of that. We can't change them. Only they can change themselves. So all we can do is set boundaries and decide and raise our standards, really, is where that starts. Raising our standards for what we will and will not accept in our life. So kind of a big aha moment for me was realizing, because before I was going about things like anybody that wanted to be in my life, I allowed them in my life. Like I thought I had standards, but I really didn't. And I mistook not having standards for being compassionate. And so I was very go with the flow, which is really a nice way of saying I had really terrible boundaries. And because I wasn't discerning, this has nothing to do with about being judgmental, but it has everything to do with being discerning about who comes into your life and who you allow in your inner circle. So even though these people are siblings or family, just because they're family doesn't mean that they are like entitled to a role in your inner circle, especially if they're abusive. So if a person's treating you, if there's like all of these layers of dysfunction in your family and your siblings are, enabling your parents' abusive behavior, you can't control that and you can't control them. And so all you can do is just like set your boundary, assert yourself, and then kind of anticipate their reaction and then try to respond accordingly. So maybe that means, if you guys get together every weekend, let's say for family time, if they're there and it turns into this whole drama every single weekend, quit going every single weekend, or only go for like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, or kind of figure out what you need to do in order to not have all of this dysfunctional behavior be such a negative impact on you. Because you can tell them, like, hey, mom and dad are abusive, or they're narcissists, or they're this, or they're that. And if they don't want to hear it, they're not going to hear it. And if they say, and this is very common for them to say, oh, well, you don't understand. You're not compassionate. Dad grew up with an abusive father, and mom grew up with, I don't know, without, her parents died when she was really young. And so this is why they're so abusive. And we just need to be more compassionate and understanding when they yell at us and they threaten and they call us names. Because that's what love is. That's what family does. And it's not. Like, that's what dysfunctional families do, but that's not what healthy people do. So, but of course, no, that would cause a huge fight if you were to say something like that. But, so don't, don't say that. But, like, just realizing they're going to justify all of this abusive behavior. You can't change them. So all you can do is just, make it very clear. Like, I'm not going to be called names. I'm not going to be ground down. I'm not going to, try to justify my truth or my reality. And, but realizing too, here's the thing with boundaries, is when a person sets them, it's very common, because then the whole family dynamic changes. Because every family has this dance. And with dysfunctional families, that dance is a crazy, chaotic mess, and it's dancing on eggshells around elephants in the room. Like, it's a den of dysfunction. When a person in that family decides, hey, you know what, like, I'm done, like, I'm not doing this anymore, then, like, it's like the needle just scratches across the record, like, what? And everybody in the family, like, looks at them as if to say, well, wait a minute, no, we need you. Like, we need you to dance on eggshells and dance around these elephants. Like, this is what we do, and this is what we do every single Sunday. And how dare you not play your role? And if you stick to your guns and you're like, you know what? Nope, this is my line in the sand. I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I love you guys, but I can't be in this. Once you get to that point, oftentimes it means cutting off or really limiting contact dramatically with lots of different people in your family. Because they've got, really skewed boundaries too. So it's you navigating that line for you as you go along. You can cut contact with whoever you want to cut contact with. I mean, this is your life. So that's totally up to you as far as how you handle this. If you go low contact, if you stay in normal contact, if you go, no contact, what have you. So it's a line, it's such an individual line. And what I might do is probably going to be very different from what you might do or what somebody else might do. And there is no necessarily like right or wrong answer. It's what you need to do in order to stay safe and sane. And just navigating that, you will know as you start coming up with boundaries and navigating what you want to be normal, what you want to be this new relationship to be like you'll have the clarity that you need as you move forward with this. Okay, Patel says, how can I snap out of moments when I think back to my breakup with a narcissist and how I could have done things differently to salvage the relationship? So, yeah, those moments of nostalgia, they are a slippery slope. They really, really are. I encourage people to write down a list of all of the reasons as to why why you don't have them in your life and why you don't want them in your life. Because those moments of nostalgia, it's sort of like quitting smoking, right? Like if you quit smoking or you quit drinking, you're going to have those moments, you're going to have those low points or those weak moments where you want a cigarette or you want a drink. And it's really helpful to prepare yourself for that as much as possible. So when those things do happen, you aren't totally thrown off balance and break down and have a cigarette or a drink or contact your ex. So if you can and this works for smoking and drinking too. If you can make a list of all of the reasons as to why you don't want this anymore, and then when you're having those low moments, to go back through and read that list, that'll help to remind you of, oh, right, like that's why. But those moments of rehashing things where you're like, boy, you know what, I really could have done this differently, and maybe if I had done X, Y, and Z, then this would have been different. But the reality is, if you're in a relationship with a narcissistic person, there is no relationship because they're not team oriented. A relationship means like the ability to relate, like the relational ability between two people. With narcissists, they don't have that. It's all about them all of the time. They don't take other people into sincere consideration. They might for a short period of time, like during love bombing and all that, but it's all part of their manipulation. So, all you can do is figure out, okay, what could you do differently next time for hopefully a healthy, sincere relationship with somebody else who treats you with dignity and respect and who has that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. Because if those elements are not there, then a relationship is not possible. So, just something to consider. Shiraz says, I tend to sleep a lot more than ever. A lot of victims say they can't sleep. Is this normal to sleep like a baby with all this distress in your life? Sometimes I feel like it's my own release. Well, everybody has their own kind of methods of coping and escape. So a lot of people, it's like some common ones are like eating too much or not eating at all. So people oftentimes will gain 20 pounds or they'll lose 20 pounds. They might be sleeping a lot, like excessively, like 12 hours or more a day, or they might not be sleeping at all. Like they might be getting 2 or 3 hours a night and they're just exhausted. They might feel incredibly angry or they might feel numb. So everybody has kind of their own, they cope with this in their own way. Just as an aside, kind of what I noticed when I was going through all this, and kind of what I've come to notice in general, is when I'm stressed and I feel like I have no control over the situation, I don't sleep. If I am incredibly stressed and overwhelmed, like I do have some control over the situation, then I sleep. And then I gain weight too. Like I sleep more and I eat more. But if I'm feeling totally out of control, I don't eat and I don't sleep. So it's interesting to pay attention to kind of what are your behavior patterns? How do you handle stress? It's these experiences are incredibly eye-opening, and it's interesting to kind of learn this stuff about yourself, and realize that's what it is. It's everybody handles stress differently. And for different reasons and for different ways. Some people drink, some people watch a lot of TV, some people don't want to be alone at all, and they're spending every waking moment with friends or with other people. Other people really want to retreat, and they're like, you know what, I don't trust anybody, I just want to be alone. And so then they don't want anything to do with anybody. So I would encourage you to not necessarily try to judge how you're coping with this right now. Instead, try to replace that judgment or that concern you have for how you're coping with curiosity. That's where I think the magic really happens, is when you can do that, because then you can realize, okay, this is why I'm sleeping a lot. Like, this is, like you said, this is my only release. This is my way of just kind of, when I'm sleeping, I don't have problems, right? So this is how I'm coping with stress. And have I ever done this before? And what's worked before? And what other ways could I handle this stress besides sleep? And getting curious about it. Would possibly watching some comedy help? Would setting a timer for 20 minutes and doing something that you're dreading help? Would getting like an accountability partner in like a support group or something, would that help? Would reaching out to your support system help? Would, if you're feeling severely depressed and you're like, man, I'm really gaining a lot of weight, or I'm losing a lot of weight, or I'm really sleeping too much, would possibly going to a doctor and seeing about getting on some antidepressants be something to do? So just getting curious about it and seeing kind of what your highest and best self comes up with that. Find Peace says, yes, the story doesn't even seem real to people when you share it. Oh, totally. Totally. I call it like a Lifetime TV movie. That's what I felt like when I was going through mine. I'm like, this stuff, does this even happen? This is like, happens on like 2020 or like Dateline. Like, this isn't, how can this be my life? Like, how did I get here? It's awful. But that level of craziness just confirms that you're not dealing with a normal person. Like, normal people don't cause that level of destruction in another person's life. But if a person's never lived it, they're like, whoa, how does that even happen? Let me get some tea out of my giant mug. Okay, Boz says, is there a specific reason a narcissistic woman would get into a massive rage and say or do things to hurt you after you simply told them that you loved them and wanted to be with them? Yes. So it's thought in general that narcissists, so when people say narcissists can't love, what they're talking about is the main issue with narcissism is they fear intimacy. So anything that makes them vulnerable. They're not emotionally available in a nutshell. They're not emotionally available. And so these qualities of like love, empathy, kindness, compassion, these are all seen as a weakness to them. And it's disgusting to them. And it's disgusting to them because they've turned that side off to themselves. As this is kind of the theory behind it, as like a self-defense mechanism, so they don't get hurt. And so by us trying to draw that out in them, like, oh, I love you, I want to open up, I want to share things with you, I want to do all this. Part of why they feel justified in abusing it, and this really like just speaks to the pathology that is their behavior, that is that mindset of like they see these traits inside of us as disgusting. And so when they go on that attack, and then that brings out all of this abuse, not all of them are like this, but when a person is abusive, when a person's abusive to another person, they generally have to have a reason for it. And the way that narcissistic people work up their reasons in their mind is they have to make us the enemy, which makes sense, right? Like if you think about it, if you're going to mistreat somebody, you have to convince yourself that they're deserving of that mistreatment. And so if we're bringing up, or if we're somehow like, obviously not intentionally, but like if we're triggering these emotions in them that they view as dangerous or problematic, they're going to go on the defensive. So that's oftentimes why that happens. If a person brings up, love or wanting to settle down or intimacy of any kind, that they go on the attack, because to them they're not emotionally available for intimacy, and they don't want to be. That's the thing. So even in like people talk about them changing. It's not as simple as flipping a switch. So generally, if a person's turned off some side to themselves, if they're like, you know what, maybe they were abused as children, or something traumatic happened to them, or I don't know what any number of things could have caused them to just kind of not have that ability. Nature, nurture, both, who's to say? But if they've turned off that side of them, or if they never had it to begin with, they're not going to understand it. So them changing that isn't as simple as them just like flipping the switch back. It's just, if a person's not emotionally available, they're not emotionally available. And if they sincerely do want to be emotionally available, you're talking a long time, probably years of intensive therapy for them to even learn how to dissolve this false self that they've created and replace that with a healthy self. So they would have a long road ahead of them. And unfortunately, if a person's not aware, if they're at that stage in change where they're like pre-contemplation, where they're not even beginning to contemplate that they need to change or that they want to change, if they don't think that they have a problem, they're a million miles away from changing. And that's kind of the added challenge to this too. So I hope that helps. Boz says, narcissists seem to be everywhere today. The number seems a lot higher than 1 in 25. Yeah, I would say it's, well, I don't know. I think estimates are anywhere from, like 1 in 10 people to 1 in 25 people. I think though, if a person struggles with being discerning, because again, this is where our learning has to come into play, because, we talk so much about narcissists needing to change and to develop empathy and caring and compassion and concern and all of these qualities. But for us, there's change that needs to happen too. And interestingly enough, it's for both of us, for narcissists and kind of empaths or people on the opposite end of the side of the spectrum, it's all about getting in alignment with our like authentic self. And that, I know it sounds really hippie woo-woo. Like I know how that sounds, but it's true. And it's getting back into alignment. So they're kind of tilted this way to a certain degree, and we're tilted the other way to a certain degree. And it's sort of like weather stripping around a window or a door. If we are lacking solid weather stripping, then any number of things are going to come into our space. And so for us, a lot of times it's learning that we need to have boundaries, that we need to have weather stripping, it's problematic if we're taking everybody at face value, if we're instantly giving a person trust that hasn't been earned, if we're like putting ourselves last. I think those are some big realizations that take a lot of people a long time to fully realize, because it's how you've always been, it's how I've always been, where it's like, well, I thought these were all good qualities, right? Like just being helpful and being caring and always going with the flow and being compassionate. And I never really thought of myself as a people pleaser, but just being really easy to get along with, which I guess is being a people pleaser, but I never saw it like that. And so realize, just us getting back into alignment with ourselves. And the more like that you do that, the more that you realize, okay, my boundaries need some work, the less problematic people start showing up. And if they do show up, you'll find that they don't stay in your life for very long. Like you're able to get them out within a few months, within a few weeks, within a few days, or within even a few hours. Like you see it so much faster. And a lot of it just starts with being okay with putting yourself first and, distancing yourself from problematic people and problematic situations. But I will tell you, this is very, very common. So when people start waking up to this and they're like, oh, I get it. Like, I'm starting to connect the dots. I get it. I see how, like, there's been this pattern of people in my life, and these are my vulnerabilities that they've been exploiting. And you're just starting to put the pieces together. Once that starts happening, then other people who aren't at your same level of awareness, because unfortunately it takes having your life blown apart. Like, it takes this like emotional devastation, oftentimes more than once, for a person to really start putting the pieces, or starting to like connect the dots on all of this. And so when you start really getting it and you're around other people that haven't had this experience, they might be like, oh, I think you're really hypervigilant. I think you're paranoid. You just really got to trust people. And, like, they haven't learned that yet, that it's not okay. Like, it's problematic to just blindly trust total strangers. It's problematic to just blindly rush in and take people at face value. It's actually healthy to have. Actually, there's a link down in the description to an article that I wrote that comes from another book that I expanded on the topic of, but it's all about healthy boundaries. And it has diagrams, y'all, diagrams. It has diagrams of like the difference of, like kind of healthy boundaries and with strangers and with people that have shown through their actions that they're actively working against you, and healthy boundaries in friendships and like coworkers and all of this stuff. So kind of once you get that in place, then that's when your life starts really moving forward. But, with men, this kind of, so I think we're all sold a bill of goods, women and men. It's a different line of baloney that we're each sold. So, men, there's this whole thing called like have you heard of like white knight syndrome, where men are taught, oh, you need to rush in and you need to save a damsel in distress, right? Like, she needs me. And so there's a lot of guys out there that are like, I need to rescue her, but that's not your job. And the problem is when you're trying to forever rescue women that need rescuing, like that just never ends well, because they're an adult and they need to know how to rescue themselves. And so men, good-natured men that are like, yeah, this is what it means to be a good guy, they tend to get burned with problematic women, especially if their women are roping them in and they're using, guilt and obligation and pity and sympathy and, on and on and on. It can be really hard for a guy to see this as their behavior as problematic. So, and then same with women, it's kind of the whole, being taught to, oftentimes go with the flow and be people pleasing and not say no, and, to really continually build up a man so he's not threatened by you. So it's just these really toxic, unhealthy messages that both men and women are taught. And our lives are not going to work until we can shed that garbage and see it for what it is. Cecilia says she's eating a Subway sandwich and it's a 10 out of 10 for her. Awesome. I'm glad. Have you found other things that are a 10 out of 10 for you? Since we had that discussion, I'm curious. AJ says, if narcissists are not self-aware, why do so many of them use that term and accuse their victims of being a narcissist? I don't think most narcissists realize that they're a narcissist. And even if, And even if they did, I don't think that most people don't even understand what that word really means. So I don't think it would be like this negative thing. Nobody like willingly admits like, yeah, I'm a really difficult douchebag. Like nobody like pridefully admits that, right? And so if they're calling themselves a narcissist, odds are they're meaning it in a way such as like, I think I'm the best. They're confusing narcissism with like self-love or healthy self-esteem is maybe a better way to put it. And it's not either of those things. It's actually the exact opposite of those things. But because they don't think of it that way, like they're thinking of like the more like social construction definition of narcissism. But that grandiosity, that arrogance, that need to have power and control over other people, all of that stems from insecurity and a lack of self-love and a lack of self-esteem and a lack of self-confidence. It doesn't come from a place of security, because a happy, healthy, well-adjusted, secure person doesn't feel the need to grind others down or destroy other people or to have power and control over others. They don't need that. So why do narcissists call other people narcissists? I think it's, if they're calling somebody else a narcissist, it's just like calling them any other name. So it's like saying, you're so self-absorbed. Like, oh, you want me to change. You have a problem with me abusing you. Oh God, like the level of dysfunction there is just like staggering. To a narcissist, they think that they should just get whatever they want, whenever they want, as much as they want, with whomever they want, and that nobody else should have a problem with it. And so if somebody else does have a problem with it, that's when they're like, I can't believe you have a problem with me. Like, you're so selfish. Like, do you see what I'm like? It's so hard to wrap our minds around, but it's very common for them to say, you're so selfish, you're so manipulative, you're so abusive, or some, form of that. You're so controlling. I love you so much and all you do is take so much. You're never happy. It's never enough for you. They spin this around. This is just it's this pathological, like dysfunctional mindset where everything is like reversed in their mind. It's, and a lot of people that have been the targets of narcissistic abuse, they leave these relationships and they're like, I don't know. I might be a narcissist. I'm really concerned that I was. And I got to the point where I was yelling at him, or I really wanted to lash out, or they start acting out of character for them, which is actually a term for that. It's called reactive abuse, where a person gets abused and abused and abused. If they're not going to leave that environment, or if they think that they can't leave that environment for whatever reason, because of finances or children or what have you, then in their mind, their only reaction, like a person can only be pushed so far before they push back. And that's what reactive abuse is, where that target gets pushed and pushed and pushed, and then they just lash out, and then they name call, they start yelling, they start taking on like a lot of these characteristics in order to try to fight fire with fire. So I hope that helps. Yes. Little Miss says, yeah, my narcissistic partner never slept either. He would shame me for needing 8 hours of sleep. He would try to keep me up for hours. That is very, very common. And all of that, them not sleeping, them trying to shame the other partner for actually needing sleep or needing a healthy amount of sleep or wanting to sleep in or wanting to basically do something, excuse me, wanting to do something that they didn't want to do. And, or keeping the person up for hours on end, when they're trying to sleep. Like if you had a big day the next day, like you have a job interview, or maybe you just have to get up for work, and they're wide awake and they're wanting to talk, or they're turning lights on, or they're slamming doors, or it's just all about them, and it's just not respecting boundaries. Everything boils down to power and control. And for a narcissist, it's all about them getting and keeping power and control over their target and over situations in general. Camila says, the narcissist I discarded is attempting to hoover me after 3 months of no contact. He just texted at 11 p.m. You got to keep your emotional shields up. If you haven't already deleted it, I highly recommend it. Block on social media, block on your phone. This is what they do. And they can come back a year later, they can come back 5 years later, they can come back 20 years later, they can come back 80 years later. Like, don't confuse that persistency is not a word. Don't confuse that persistence with sincerity. This is just how they are. They can become very obsessive, and it's all about getting and keeping power and control. And it's like, it can be like dealing with a small child. So if you don't respond, anticipate their behavior to escalate. So what might start off as like a friendly hoover might turn into, oh, I never realized you were so stubborn. It's going to be trying to push all of your buttons to see what's going to make her respond to me. If I tell her about a new girl that I'm dating, or if I tell her, oh, she wasn't worth it anyhow, or if I call her abusive, or do you see what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like poking. And some of them you're like, oh, like you really want to text that person back and set them straight, set the record straight. But then you're giving them what they want. Like, they don't want to work towards a resolution. They don't want to be friends. They don't want to date. Like, they just want to suck you back into their sick game so that they can win. It's just wrestling around with the pig in mud. That's what it is. So see it for what it is. Don't let nostalgia take over your better judgment. Realize it's all a game. It's all layers of a game. If you respond, you're going to get sucked back into that game. There is the only winning move. It's like that Matthew Broderick movie from the 80s, War Games. The only winning move is to not play. And it's very, very true. Like, it's not worth your time or your energy. It's not that they're smarter than us. It's just that when you're dealing with a manipulative person who has the emotional maturity of like a 6-year-old, they'll always think that they won. Like, no matter what you say, they're going to spin it around. They're going to try to use it against you. It's an exercise in frustration and in futility. And it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. So try to slow things down for yourself and ask yourself, if you're even tempted to reopen contact, like, how much more pain do I want in my life? Like, get real with yourself. How much more pain do I want? And if you're like, well, I think maybe this time they've changed. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they're not really a narcissist. It's amazing the justifications we can work up in our mind. And, the reality is, if you're thinking that, it's the label doesn't matter. The behavior matters. If the behavior is crazy making or abusive, that's not workable stuff. Like, that's slam dunk, deal breaker stuff, drive on. And again, if you're tempted, and I get it because I've been there many times. If you're tempted to reopen contact, just be like, well, I guess I just haven't had enough pain in my life. Like, I guess I just need to go get burned one more time. And then I think if you can get really real with yourself, it'll be a lot easier to just delete, make that list of all the reasons you don't want this person in your life, and then you go do something else that makes you feel good about you. Let's see. Finding Peace says, yes, finding the words to articulate what happened. I'm having a hard time feeling validated by my family. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. I think the other big lesson in all of this is it's nice to have validation. It is so nice. I am so thankful. I came across, it was one conversation with one therapist in passing when I was getting, I don't even know who, like Hoover love bombed. It was just this insanity that was coming through on my phone, and I was terrified. I was shaking, and I was telling this guy therapist in the hallway like what was going on. I'm like, I don't even know what I need to do, and I'm scared. And even though my ex lives like 26 hours away, this is just nuts. Like, he's nuts. And he was the one that said he sounds like a narcissist. And that was like, it was just that like passing comment from him that was so life changing for me. So I get the need to feel validated by that, but at the same time, validation can be really hard to come by. And it's so important that we are able to validate ourselves and realize even if we're in a whole room full of people that don't understand what we went through, that we understand what we went through, and we understand why it was problematic, and we understand why we're leaving and why we'll never go back. Because I'll tell you, once you are able to validate yourself, the opinions of other people no longer matter. And this is such a big thing. It's such an important place that we can get to, because down the road, if you do start dating again, or if you get a job or a new friend and you start feeling like something's off, because there's lots of these people out there. If you start feeling like something's off, but if you're like, you know what, I doubt my judgment, I doubt my perception of things, I'm confused. If you start looking to other people to validate your experience, you are probably not going to get the validation that you're seeking, because they're not picking up on the same things that you're picking up on. So it's really important that you learn to trust your judgment enough to be like, the labels don't matter. Other people's validation doesn't matter. I know what I'm experiencing. I know it's problematic. I know it's deal breaker stuff for me, and I'm gone. And I don't give two hoots what anybody else has to say about it. And then once you get to that place where you can really rely on yourself to keep yourself safe, then that's when it makes trusting a lot easier, because you're no longer, because you're trusting yourself. Your trust isn't 100% in other people to not hurt you. Like, your trust is like, you're slowing things down enough to where you can trust them in time as that trust is earned. You also trust yourself enough to walk away from any red flags that you're seeing that are highly problematic. It's when we have a hard time trusting, if we have a hard time using discernment and trusting our judgment. Understandably so. Like, I get it. I was there for a long, long time, for years. And it just takes practice. Practice. Again, support groups, like, highly recommend them. It shaves years off of the learning curve and off of just the aha moments you'll have. Just accelerate. They really, really do, because you're not having to wait until you have your own aha moment. And unfortunately, aha moments tend to come from like problematic situations. Like, aha moments are often hard won, right? They're like lessons learned the hard way, and that can do a number on a person. And that's kind of the benefit of a support group, is like, you don't have to learn everything the hard way. Like, you can learn from the mistakes that other people have made. Jana says, my mind needs peace from narcissistic talk and thoughts. I need to move on and not even think about it. One of the things that I think can be really good is because our brain, when we go through something traumatic, especially manipulation, it's very common that your brain, this is your brain. So all of these like obsessive thoughts that you're having, it's your brain trying to keep you safe. And your brain is trying to do this by holding on to what caused you pain and then pulling it apart and then examining it and being like, and then trying to put it back together and being like, that doesn't fit. And then pulling it apart again and then putting it back together and being like, pulling it apart and putting it back together. And it's because it's manipulation. So when you start, it's like pulling a string on a sweater. Like it just keeps going and going and going. And then it's hard for a normal, decent person to even begin to understand how they got caught up in this. It's like getting caught up in it with a con artist or in a cult or any type of like extremely highly manipulative situation. And it's we don't think that way. So it's really hard for us to process it. And so that's why our brains do a lot of this like rehashing. It's trying to make sense of a nonsensical situation. What you can do though is realize, so not fight that, not resist that, to realize this is your brain trying to keep you safe. And this is going to sound hippie woo woo. I get it, but it does help to tell yourself, to tell your brain, thank you so much, brain. I know that you're trying to keep me safe and I really, really appreciate it. And to visualize, okay, so visualizing this pain, this focusing on, like, so let's say this is the narcissist, right? Or this is the pain of the narcissist. And it's hard because when you go through this trauma, it's like you feel like you've got to carry this around. This is what these obsessive thoughts feel like. Well, I just have to carry this around and I'm going to think about it and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to examine it and I'm just going to keep carrying it around because I can't put it down. I wish I could put it down, but I can't. And it's our brain, it's that anxiety talking of our brain is like, I can't put this down because I don't want to forget about it because it caused me pain. So I'm scared that I'm going to somehow forget about it, or that if I don't obsess about it, that I'm not going to figure it out, I think is more of what's going on. But if you can realize that's what's going on and realize, okay, you're not going to forget. You're not going to forget what happened. This doesn't mean that you have to obsess about it, that you can practice. And I would highly recommend doing this because it really helps with kind of this, like, keeping like neuroplasticity, like keeping your thoughts flexible in all of this. Because a big issue, challenge with PTSD is it's that rigidity in thinking. It's like the brain seizes on to something that caused pain and it won't let go. And that's why. So if you can realize that you are in control, you do have the power to choose what you think about. You really do. Practice putting this down. Visualize it as an object, whatever object feels right for you. And be like, okay, I'm going to now put this down here on the table. I'm going to put this down on the table for the next 20 minutes. And during that 20 minutes, I'm going to go watch some stand-up comedy. And I'm going to laugh and I'm going to have a really good time. And it's totally okay that I laugh. It doesn't mean the pain's gone. It doesn't mean my anger is gone. It doesn't mean that I'm okay with what happened to me. It just means that I'm making the conscious decision to put this down and to just enjoy life for a little bit. And then at the end of that 20 minutes, I can go, you're telling your brain this, okay, brain, then I can go pick this up again. And then we can carry it around for the rest of the afternoon if you want. And making like conscious, concerted effort to take time to put that down and then go do something else. Like I'm going to go out to lunch with my friend and we're going to have a margarita and we're going to go get our hair done or our nails done, or we're just going to go hang out in a hot tub, whatever you want to do. We're going to go have a good time. And I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to talk about this for like however long. And then when I come home, I can pick it back up again and practice doing that. You'll find that you have to redirect your thoughts. So like when you are having that margarita or you are watching that stand-up comedy, it can be easy your mind's going to want to go back to picking this up. That's okay. It's okay. It's bringing awareness to what's going on in your brain. So when you find yourself You're laughing at jokes, you're having a good time, you're watching this comedy show, and then you find yourself thinking about the situation again and being like, okay, yeah, brain, that's really interesting. That is something worth thinking about, but you know what? Not right now. We still have 12 minutes of watching the stand-up comedy, so I'm going to put this back down and then we'll get to it, okay? And then maybe a few more minutes pass and you find yourself thinking about it again. And you're like, wait a minute, how did this get here? Like, okay, yeah, this is still here. I'm going to put this down. I'm going to think about this. I've got 10 more minutes. Retraining your brain. It really, really does help. I find the more you can kind of lose yourself in something else, like comedy, like happy music, like a funny movie, something incredibly inspirational, something that you don't have to try to get yourself into another emotion. It's sort of like all you have to do is hit play and you get caught up in the current of that music, of that video, of that movie. It'll just take you with it. And that can be a really easy way to get yourself into another emotion and to practice putting down the anger and the overwhelm and all of the heaviness, and just realize, like, yeah, it's just, like, I can still take time for joy. I can still take time to laugh and do all of these things. I don't have to wait till I'm fully healed to start living my life and to start enjoying things again. Ashley says, Dana, what do you think about life coaching, or should survivors be seeking therapy? I think anybody who, a good life coach, a good therapist, it's, personally, I don't know. It just depends on who you click with more. I think kind of the benefit of a life coach is their dynamic is more peer-to-peer. So you won't have to necessarily argue your reality, whereas a lot of people, I think, feel like they have to do that with a lot of therapists, because it's not a peer-to-peer relationship with a therapist, and which I think is a problem, frankly. But so there's definitely that unequal dynamic kind of walking in. But with all that said, if you get a good therapist who's really familiar with emotional abuse, they can be fantastic. If a life coach is familiar with emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and kind of what we call narcissistic abuse, whoever's familiar with it, like if a person's not familiar with it, whether they have 5 PhDs, whether they're a doctor, whether they're a therapist, it doesn't matter. If they're not familiar with narcissistic abuse, they're not going to be helpful. So, or if they're not familiar with like psychological and emotional abuse, they're not going to be helpful. In fact, they're probably going to be damaging. So life coach, therapist, I don't know. Everybody has their own style. I kind of tend to like life coaches more because they do a lot more like homework. But that's just me personally. And, you know, I don't know. It's kind of whoever you feel comfortable with, I guess. There's, like I said, there's great therapists out there. There's great life coaches out there. Tony Robbins is a life coach, or he kind of invented life coaching. I would prefer him any day of the week over pretty much anybody, because he's phenomenal. So, I don't know, just kind of personal preference, I guess. Cliff says, yeah, so many people don't understand. Talking openly is a challenge. More often than not, I get the awkward look. Yeah, and I think too, especially with, I think men, that's an added challenge that a lot of guys have, because there's this kind of social understanding of what abuse is and who is an abuser and who can be a target of abuse. And it can be a very, like an extra awkward conversation for men to have, to try to explain, this is what's going on to me. Actually, I have my questions tonight. I have I have a total of 4 questions, 3 of which are from men. So, this is something that guys go through too, and probably really don't realize it. Even women, even oftentimes don't realize that they're being abused, even though there's a lot of education out there about what an abusive relationship is. But unfortunately, a lot of that information is geared towards physical abuse. So if a person's not being beaten up, like badly beaten up, they oftentimes don't realize, oh, could this possibly really be happening to me? That was one of the most interesting things for me when I started this YouTube channel and my blog and everything else, and was getting emails from people. At first it was women, and then it was men, which I just was not prepared for at all. And then I started getting emails from gay men, and then from gay women. And all of the confusion that men and kind of the gay community in general had about abuse. And they're like, well, Dana, I'm in a lesbian relationship. But I think I'm being abused, but I'm not sure. Can this happen to me? Or Dana, I'm a guy. Like, can this happen to me? And it's sad. Like, there just really needs to be a lot of education. It's so important that we realize that abusive people, they can be any age, any gender, any nationality, any religious orientation, any sexual orientation, any income level, any educational level, any professional level. They can be, parents, children, neighbors, friends, coworkers, priests, kind of just, you name it. And to see the behavior for what it is and not the gender. So, okay, let me scroll down. Good. Cliff says, this has been a great place to watch and realize that there are others in the same place. I'm glad. There's actually my website, thriveafterabuse.com. If you go to the support group area in there, there's a handful of guys in that support group. And one of the moderators in there is, well, actually, personally, I think all of my moderators are fantastic. They go above and beyond and are phenomenal. But there's, actually, I have guy moderators in both of my support groups, but the one guy in my website group he's phenomenal, and just, I think, really gives spot on insight and support to men and women. But I think it's nice for guys to have like a guy moderator too in the forum that they can ask questions to. And and that group my website group is smaller than the Facebook group, which can be, there's pros and cons to that. But the website group, it's nice, I think, because it's I don't know, like, not as intimidating, I guess, as diving into the Facebook group, which is like, I don't even know, like 19,500 people. Like, it's a big group, and it grows by probably 200 to 300 people a day. So, okay. Find Peace says, I'm still in the process of divorcing my sociopathic husband. I have PTSD, anxiety, and pain. When will this pain go away? Oh, that's such a big question. And it's so relative. It really just depends on the person. And, right now you're at the beginning of all of this. Like, you're still in the process of divorcing him. And it's really hard for a wound to heal if it hasn't closed up yet. So, healing comes in time. It comes in waves too. Most people kind of tend to think that healing is this very, linear process, and it's not. It's a very messy, chaotic process. And, you think you've gotten past a certain point, and the next thing you know, you're crying and you're a big snotty sniveling mess, and you're like, I thought I was done with this, and like, here I am again. And so, or you'll bounce all over the place. It's the process of grief. It's the process of all kinds of healing. I think what tends to accelerate that process is if you can give your pain a purpose. So letting your pain, I think first and foremost, making the declaration, just setting the intention of, I'm not going to let this destroy my life, is a really great place to start. Because when a person's going through this and they're emotionally, like, they're all over the board. They're like, I don't know, like, I'm feeling suicidal one day and then the next day I'm totally fine. And I think this might ruin my life, but I can't sleep. And they're just all over the place. If you can kind of rein that in and put like a stop loss on this, on the end of it, and be like, okay, I'm not gonna let this end my life. I'm not gonna commit suicide over this. Once you just get that option off the table, like, okay, I'm not even entertaining that as a possibility, then the next step is to make the declaration of, I'm not going to let this ruin my life. Even if you don't know how, it's okay. You don't need to have a plan in place. You just need to make that declaration. The next step is, I am going to use this towards my highest and greatest good. I don't know how, but that's what I'm going to do. Like, that's the intention that I'm setting. I'm going to use this for my highest and greatest good. Then the next step above that, which I think maybe even energizes a lot of us, since we do tend to be empathic, is I'm going to use this towards the highest and greatest good of other people. If you can get a vision that's compelling enough that it can pull you, then it can really help to turn your pain into like rocket fuel, because it gives it a purpose. It gives it a positive purpose that you can use it towards good. So you kind of decide, you get to decide. This is your story. This is your life. And if you're tired of writing a chapter in your story, you start a new one. And so this is your brand new chapter. So what's going to happen? It's sort of like a choose your own adventure book. That's your life. Like, okay, what's going to happen in this chapter? How am I going to handle this? What kind of story do I want to be able to tell my grandchildren about how I overcame this? Very, very powerful stuff when you start thinking about it in terms of, yeah, this is a chapter in the book that is my life. And I get to decide how these chapters end, how my story ends, like what kind of character development happens, kind of the different trials and tribulations that I go through and how I handle it. And I think just realizing that, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. It's so intense and it's so raw because it's so right now. And, it causes like an intense emotional devastation in a person's life. So, but realizing, yeah, you have control over this. Like, you get to decide how this plays out and how you're going to handle it and how you're going to use this for your highest and greatest good, whatever that might mean, and using it for the highest and greatest good of others, whatever that might mean. Maybe you decide that you're going to write a book that you've always wanted to write, or that you're going to get into really great shape, or that you're going to, I don't know, bicycle across Australia. Like, I don't know, or that you're going to go vegan for 3 months or 6 months or for forever, or you're just going to do something. Like, you're going to really try to, because there's so much energy in all of this pain. And if we can channel that into something positive, then man, like, it truly does become rocket fuel. It's just giving this energy a positive direction, because if you don't direct it, or if it takes a negative turn to where then you become focused on revenge, or you become stuck in anger or pain or bitterness, then it can destroy your life, and it can destroy the lives of a lot of people around you. And so this is why I think it's so important to set that intention of, nope, this is not, they don't get that. Like, they've caused enough pain in my life. The pain ends now. It ends here. It ends now with me. I'm not, this is not going to destroy my life. Like, I'm not going to give them that. So the sooner you can move in that direction, the sooner the pain will have someplace to go. Okay. Okay, let's see. Oh, geez. Boz says, okay, I need some clarification for this. Post discard after being treated like the worst person in the world and cutting contact with me, why does a narcissist seem to be posting responses on social media, for example, mimicking mine or provoking me, even though they have no intent to communicate or connect anymore? It's because she or he is trying to lure you into responding. So it's designed to provoke. So let's say, for example, if you really liked, I don't know, German Shepherds, right? And now all of a sudden she's making posts about how awesome German Shepherds are. Or she's making posts about abuse and how men are scum. Or she's taking something that's near and dear to you and then using it to get attention, or it's because she knows odds are that you're still looking at her Facebook page. Like, it's all designed to provoke. I've had the same stuff happen to me, and it's infuriating. So if you can block her Facebook page, block, like, this is not normal, healthy behavior. This is not the kind of woman, person that you want in your life. This is a bunch of chaos and control and drama and dysfunction, and it's designed to be inflammatory. They're like internet trolls. That's internet trolls. Like, you're dealing with an internet troll. So everything for them boils down to power and control. Same with internet trolls. Like, it's all, any type of like provoking, pot stirring, narcissistic, crazy making person out there, they're doing that because when they can get a reaction, it makes them feel smug and superior. So instead of getting their self-esteem needs met in like a healthy way, like, I ran 3 miles today, or, I can hold a job, or like, I cleaned out my car. Instead of like doing things that actually build healthy self-esteem, they don't, like, the only way that they know how to get that bucket filled is to tear down other people, or to provoke, to agitate and irritate and provoke them into a reaction. And then in their mind, they're like, haha, I won. He got so upset. And it's like all of these little mini victories for this battle that they're fighting in their head. I mean, this again just speaks to the pathological personality that you're dealing with. And it like, you're not dealing with a balanced person who's emotionally available, who does stuff like that. I mean, that speaks volumes to that level of emotional maturity, or immaturity, I should say. And it's so confusing. Like, if you haven't been through something like this before, you're just like, I feel like Alice in Wonderland. Like, how did I get here? What on earth is going on? I just, all I wanted to do was like love this person. I thought we were in a relationship. I thought we had this amazing connection. And now they're showing me that they're just bananas. Like, I don't even know what's going on. And yeah, it's bananas. Like, it's just all about power and control. It's all about ego. Yes. Boz says, so this is fuel for them. knowing that it makes me suffer and as a form of gaslighting. Oh yes. For many of them, it's that sadistic bend. Like the more a person suffers, the more they're like, oh, look at how significant I am. I caused them pain. So, and this is a mistake that many of us make when we don't realize that we're not dealing with a person who's solutions oriented. Like we're not dealing with a person who wants to work as a team. So if we're normal, balanced people, or like, let's work towards a solution. Let's work together. Let's make this relationship work, right? If you're dealing with a highly manipulative person who can't stand being vulnerable, who loathes intimacy, and who's not emotionally available, they don't want to work as a team. For them, it's all about them all of the time. And so it's this, and it takes normal people like a while to see that this is what's going on, because it's a very different way of relating to the world. Yeah. Like if we're like, I really want to be in a relationship with this person because I sincerely want to be in a relationship with them. I'm like, I'm not playing some sort of like weird, mind-bending ego gratification game. Like I thought they were a cool person. And then you realize with narcissists, you don't know them. It's all a series of masks. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all a game. It's all manipulation. There is no like authentic self there. It's all of these different defense mechanisms that they have. I mean, it's tragic, really, is what it is. But there's nothing there, and to try to get and give love to a person who lacks the capacity is just going to frustrate you, and it's going to annoy them, and that's putting it mildly. Like it doesn't work. And so many of them have that sadistic bend where they want to see a person suffer, because again, they're seeing these traits of, they're seeing you being open, that level of intimacy and honesty and openness and sincerity, as they view that as disgusting and as problematic and as a weakness. And they can't stand, that grandiosity comes from insecurity. And that insecurity is like, they're never enough. And so they're so over the top because there's nothing there. So like the only way that they can feel like they're enough is to tear others down. I mean, it's really dysfunctional, problematic stuff. AJ says, my counselor asked me if I still loved my narcissistic ex. I paused for a moment and said no. On reflection, it hurts because I did love him, but seeing him now and his smear campaign against me is just shocking. Yeah. Something that helped me, and maybe this will help you guys too, is I had to kind of reframe my understanding of love, because I struggled with that too. I'm like, I have these really intense feelings towards this person, but this person I think was trying to kill me. So that's not love. It's like the opposite of love. And knowing that it's the opposite of love, I think a lot of people, I see this all the time, like they get really stuck in this, but Dana, but I love him. And how do I let go when I love him or I love her? And I think it's important to make the distinction, first of all, what is love, right? Like love is not abuse. Love is not treating a person with a lack of dignity or respect. It's not putting a person down. It's not making them feel fearful or intimidated or insecure or less than. Like that's not love. That's not even in the same zip code as love, right? Love is the exact opposite. Like love is clarity. Love is certainty. Love is stability. Love is appreciating the other person. Love is acceptance. Love is kindness and compassion and sincerity and honesty and dignity and respect and trust and all of these things. And love takes time. It takes time to build that between two people. But those foundational traits need to be there in order for like a healthy love to be built on top of that. So kind of separating out that. Okay, so the way that I might feel this intensity towards this person, like really strong pulls, but that's not love. Those are trauma bonds. And those trauma bonds develop through like the highs and lows of any type of problematic situation. An abusive relationship, a hostage situation. It's the bonds that are felt between like a pimp and a prostitute, or mainly for the prostitute, for the pimp. Any type of like any type of like narcissist and their target, whatever that dynamic may be. Like those are the bonds that develop. So those feelings of intensity, it feels like love, but it's not. It's trauma bonds. And, for me, I used to tell myself, like, I don't love him. I love who I thought he was. Like, that guy was awesome. That mask was awesome. Anybody would have liked that guy. Like, he was awesome. But that's not who he was. The real him is a terrible human being. And I don't love that guy. I don't even know that guy. And really making that distinction. Like do you love him or do you love the mask? Or do you love who you hoped that he could possibly become full-time down the road, sometimes when, if given enough love or understanding or therapy or religion or rehab or, what have you. But it's who they show us is not who they really are. They're showing us their highest and best self if they're wanting us, because they say like, narcissists need to be admired. And so they oftentimes show their highest and best self or what they think you want their highest and best self to be. So you're idealizing them because they need that admiration. Whereas like us, we just go around being normal people, right? Like kind of who we are with our parents is who we are with our friends, is who we are at work, as who we are when we're alone, like as who we are with our neighbors. Like there's not all of these different masks depending, like, I shouldn't say, I think everybody has different sides to themselves, but not like radically different sides to themselves like that. And, just kind of realizing that's loving the person that we thought they were. It's hard. It's hard to let go of that. But it's all fantasy. It was all created. All an illusion. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll down here. Sarah says, how do I forgive myself after doing some embarrassing and out of character things I did in the relationship to try to hold on to my narcissist? I think you realize that you did the best you could at the time with the information that you had. And that's all any of us can do in any given situation. You were with a highly manipulative person, and it's one of those things, like if you don't know what you're dealing with, like you're going to have all kinds of out of character kind of behavior, because these relationships are just so outrageous. They're so over the top, and they're so outside the realm of who we normally are, how we normally act, or situations we would ever normally find ourselves in. So it's all new territory. Okay. Happy Girl says, is therapy worth going through? It definitely can be if you have a good therapist. At a minimum, I would encourage you to get into a support group. That's it'll give you a lot of validation and clarity. And and with finding a good therapist, it's like finding a good professional in any field. And sometimes it takes, calling a few of them on the phone or even meeting a few of them and seeing if you click, if there's that rapport there, and if you feel like they get you, and if they're truly familiar with abuse. They're probably not going to have heard of the term narcissistic abuse. So using terms like, emotional abuse or psychological abuse is probably going to be more helpful. And if you're referring to the person as a narcissist and they're wanting to push back and like if you feel like you have to argue for your reality or argue for your truth, then you're with the wrong therapist. So the right therapist should be able to see what you're saying. If you talk about what's going on in terms of behaviors, like that's always helpful. So they can kind of see the fuller picture. Because what one person says as this person's a narcissist might be very different from what somebody else says, what might be very different from what they're thinking. And this is why it can be very helpful to talk about behaviors in terms of behaviors and not labels. So yeah. Oh, what was the question? Eric says, hey Dana, is it possible to beat them at their own game and get back with them and control them? I mean, yeah, it is, but to me, it would just be a giant waste of time. There's no benefit. I think if a person were to do something like that, the goal would be like revenge. I think you'd have a really hard time. First of all, it'd be a giant waste of time. Okay. Second of all, odds are you'd probably start developing feelings again because you're dealing with a master manipulator. Third, I think you'd have a really hard time like keeping your cool and like not, I don't know. And then like at what point would you call things off with them? You know what I mean? So, and it depends on like what you went through. Like if they were cheating and lying and doing all this, and it's, they're still going to do the same stuff. Like even if you go back to them, like you can't control them to the point where like you could have them have necessarily different behavior. It's sort of like asking, can I juggle snakes? Like, yeah, you can. Like, you can juggle snakes. Is it a good idea? No, it's not. I don't, would I advise to do something like that? No, absolutely not. Like, there's no benefit in juggling snakes. The odds of you getting bit are really, really high. And plus, it's just kind of a big waste of time. I'd much rather see you pouring that energy into building a good life for yourself. That truly is like the best revenge is an amazing life for yourself. Like finding, finding awesome friends, finding an awesome partner, taking up a hobby, like learning a new language, playing guitar, doing whatever makes you feel alive. The more time that you spend in this like toxic quicksand that is a narcissist, it's a waste of your life. Like it really is. I get the feeling of like, I want revenge. I want to redo. Like I want to redo. I want to have power and control. I want to mess them up. I want to teach them a lesson. I want revenge. I want justice. Totally understandable, but it's really just not worth it. Like you're so much better off finding awesome people in your life, doing awesome things, and letting them just letting them be, like just cutting that off and driving on. Jacqueline says, hey Dana, how does he lose control by signing divorce papers? Because he's losing power and control. It's like the ultimate, right? So by signing divorce papers, then he is saying, I am relinquishing control over you. And they don't like to do that. So this is why it's so important whenever a person leaves a relationship with a person who is driven to have power and control over others, that you realize what you're dealing with. Like, you are not dealing with a normal, balanced person. You're dealing with a pathological, potentially very dangerous personality. So they don't react well by having power and control taken away from them. This is the whole thing. Like, it triggers this narcissistic injury, because now you're taking the toy away from the child, right? Like, you're saying, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. They go bananas. That narcissistic injury triggers that narcissistic rage, which for them, it's like the adult version of a temper tantrum, which can lead to it can lead to violence. It can lead to all kinds of things. So you just really want to proceed with caution and plan accordingly. And the less, if you're even remotely concerned about how they're going to react to something like that, do it in public, or have the police do a civil standby, or ideally like have them go somewhere to an attorney's office to sign papers. Don't be alone with them, because you're dealing with like an angry bull. Like, it's just in any little thing, anything, not even, it doesn't even have to be real. Like, it can just be any perceived slight against them. Like, if you were to say, well, have a nice day, they'd be like, what? Like, and they just go bananas. Like, what do you mean, have a nice day? Raw. And they just rage and they can attack. So there's nothing, when a person's already at that point where they're so angry and feeling so out of control, you're walking on eggshells. You don't even know what's going to set them off. So just like prepare for that. And it's something to really take seriously. Okay. Shara says, I know it'll be a while, but I cannot wait for true love, acceptance, to be honored. I lost it. Where's your question? That was such a good one. Or it was a comment, not really a question. Okay. I know it'll be a while, but I cannot wait for true love, acceptance, to be honored, and to finally be the loving role model for my kids and have a relationship to show them how love is meant to be. Great point. Okay. I love that you said this. And let me just say that you don't need another person to show that to them. In fact, I think your kids would be better off if you can show them that you've developed all of that with yourself and with them. And if you can show them how to develop that with themselves. So if we're walking around thinking like, I really want to feel, true love and to be accepted and honored and treated with dignity and respect and to have this loving relationship. It sounds hokey, I get it, but we have to have that with ourselves first. Because until we have that with ourselves, until we love ourselves and put ourselves first, then we're going to continue settling for mediocrity, or worse, we're going to continue settling for abuse. So it's really important that we love ourselves enough to walk away from things that aren't healthy for us. And to talk to your children about this and letting them know, yes, this is why, here's how to have a healthy relationship with yourself, right? Like, here's how to put yourself first. So like, hey kids, I love you guys. I've had a long day. I'm going to go take a hot shower. This is a way that I'm going to be good to myself, right? Or you can make a really nice dinner and say, kids, I'm making this really nice dinner. This is a great way that we can show ourselves that we love ourselves by the foods that we eat. And your kids are probably, depending on how old they are, they're either going to think you've totally gone off the deep end if they're older, or if they're young, they might be really into that. Like, oh, well, what does that mean? Like, okay, well, like mommy realized that she needs to eat good food because it's a way of honoring our body. And this is because I feel like it's important. I want you to eat good food because I love you and I'm concerned that you're getting your vitamins and minerals, right? Mommy needs to do the same, right? Instead of like rushing around, making everything all about everybody else and then eating a bowl of cereal and then collapsing into bed. So really role modeling this stuff for your kids and explaining to them like why you're doing why you're doing this, and like having these conversations like in an age appropriate way, like about boundaries. And even if you make a healthy meal, let's say you do this on a Saturday night or something, and you've got the kids, and the kids are like, well, this is really weird. Why are we doing this? And you're like, because I want to show you guys that I love you in a healthy way. And I want to just honor this time that we have together. Like, this is what being loving looks like. This is how we show love. This is how we show that we care about each other. Because when you've had an abusive partner, this is kind of all your kids know too. So getting that straightened out in their mind, that love isn't yelling at somebody. It's not being yelled at. It's not being cheated on. It's not being hit. It's not being threatened. It's not being continually let down. It's not, being called names. It's not any of that. Like, that's not love. And getting a healthier concept of what love is and how people show love, and how, parents can show love to their children, how children can show love to their parents, and how we show love to ourselves, how we treat ourselves with respect and dignity. Because love really should be synonymous with value. Like, if we value somebody, we love them. If we value something, we love that something, right? We take care of it. We nurture it. We cultivate it. That's what love is. Love is giving something the room and space to grow. It's not trying to squash it down because we don't like what it's trying to be. Let's see, PC Prophecy had mentioned about got a few months and then potentially being homeless. Well, I would start kind of brainstorming some ideas, and could you take out loans? Could you take out credit cards? Could you stay with friends? Could you stay with some family? Could you what are some shelters out there? Brainstorming just as much as possible, even if it's not ideal. Realize this is temporary. So, what could you do? Could you stay in a tent? Could you try to make a deal with a campground manager person? What are the different options out there? And then start kind of exploring each one. Could you get another job? Could you work 2 jobs? Could you work 3 jobs? Could you, getting creative, realizing, okay, this is what I need to do for the next 3 months or the next 6 months. I can do this. And let me get a plan in place and move forward and trying to make the best plan out of all of these plans happen. Okay, let me scroll down. Let me also let me read some of these questions. Here's the first one. Dear Dana, I've been dating a woman for just 4 months, and early on, red flags were jumping out at me. But as you know, after being love bombed, I was hooked She started to devalue me slowly but surely, and that has only gotten worse. Also, she's been sabotaging plans we make together. I would say that she's very covert in her behavior, as she was very humble, pleasant, just a nice person, but my jaw nearly dropped while reading some of the things she calls me in her texts. I guess what I would really like to know is this woman a narcissist? As if there was a slim chance she wasn't, then I would have some hope that things may work out. As you say, there is no cure, which seems so unfair, but perhaps you could shine some light on it, as I desperately need some answers. Thanks. So, if you've watched, and that was from a guy named Moth. So Moth, thank you for your question. And this is why. So many people, myself included, I get it, get stuck at exactly where you are at this point of, are they a narcissist, or is this just really bad behavior that's somehow workable? And this is problematic thinking for many different reasons. But for many different reasons, because you could go to a dozen different professionals and you can get a dozen different answers as to if they're a narcissist or not. They probably wouldn't even give you a diagnosis if they didn't do a formal psychiatric evaluation on her, which probably isn't going to happen anyhow. And even if it did, she's probably going to present really well and totally manipulate the situation. So really, it's like, getting a formal psychiatric evaluation, probably not going to happen. Getting an accurate one, probably not going to happen. So with that said, let's put aside the label and let's focus on what you do know for sure, which is the behavior, which is really what's important, because the label is just a pointer. It's a pointer to behaviors. Labels come and go all of the time in the DSM. Different diagnoses, they get combined, they get recategorized, they get taken out altogether, or they get added into it. So let's just say, here's another reason as to why labels are great for pointers, but they're not like a concrete thing. Is, let's say the DSM took out narcissistic personality disorder altogether. Let's just say they completely got rid of that. Does that mean that she wasn't problematic? What does that mean, right? And really it doesn't mean anything other than that's no longer in the DSM. So, and this is what happened with sociopaths and psychopaths. It used to be two different diagnoses. It was combined into one, which is now antisocial personality disorder. It doesn't mean that sociopaths and psychopaths don't exist. It just means that was recategorized and reclassified as something else, for better or for worse. So let's look at her behavior. If she was if anybody's devaluing you, right, in general, that's a problem. And that's worthy of being a deal breaker. Because the whole purpose of dating is to see, is this person a good match? Is this person a good match for you? What are you looking for? What are your deal maker qualities and what are your deal breaker qualities? Does this person have, similar goals and values and morals and understandings of life? How do they fight? How do they show love? How do they, it's really kind of seeing, like, are we compatible? And then if not, then going our separate ways. It's not about spending time with a person, them having problematic behavior, and then us holding on to hope that they can possibly change. That will set a person up for a lifetime of hurt and heartache. So it's really important, if a person starts waving these red flags, that we take this seriously and realize, especially if these red flags are around dignity and respect. Like if a person is not treating you with dignity and respect, that's deal breaker stuff. That can't be fixed. That really, in my opinion, there's no room for negotiation. A person has shown you all that you need to see in order to get the heck out of there. Because I will tell you, the further you get along in that relationship, the worse it's going to get. Because people in general, right, the more comfortable they feel people are on their best behavior like the first 3 months of a relationship. It's sort of like at a new job, right, or a job interview. People are on their best behavior up front. The more they get settled in, the more their real self starts coming through, the more comfortable they get, right? So it's the same way with dating. And so if this woman is telling you horrible things in text messages, that's highly problematic and worthy of being a deal breaker. So a question that I would encourage you to ask yourself is, when you're dating, this goes for men or women, okay? If you're dating somebody, ask yourself, would I want a child with the exact same behavior as that other person? If the answer is no, then you need to break up with them. Because the odds of them, if you having a child with their behavior is pretty high, because they're going to be involved in their parenting. So if she's cussing you out, if she's calling you names, if she's being nasty and ugly, prepare yourself, if you had a daughter with her, that your daughter would treat you the exact same way. If that's something you don't want, you need to walk. It's not workable stuff. It's not what dating is about. It's using discernment and figuring out, is this the kind of person that I would want as a teammate to get through the highs and lows of life? Like, you want a person who's on the same side as you, right? Like somebody that's going to be pulling on the same side of the rope, because life is hard enough. Life has enough highs and lows without dealing with somebody whose personality has a ton of highs and lows. Like you don't need that. It's a bunch of unnecessary stress and hurt and heartache and all kinds of stuff. So I hope that clears things up for you. Okay, and this is from Vincent, who says, Dana, 4 months ago, my ex called me to a restaurant under the pretense of meeting someone that is special to her. It broke my heart when she told me that she wanted me to meet her new boyfriend. I stormed out immediately without meeting him. Now I receive drunk texts from her, and the message is utterly confusing. This is what she says. Vincent, I miss you. Really, so much. Please come back to me for all that we had between us. I really want you to meet him, my new partner. He is just like you. I swear you will like him. Please come back to me. I've told this new guy so much about you. Why does she want me to come back if she's already with someone? This doesn't make any sense. I agree. This makes absolutely no sense. This chick is playing games. Big time. This is exactly what triangulation, this is like probably one of the more extreme examples I've ever even heard of as far as triangulation goes. And she's so all over the place. She's bouncing back and forth within one message of, I want you, but I want him, but I miss you, but I want you to meet him. She's playing both of you guys and triangulating you, right? So here's how I read this. Like, my new partner is so much like you, and you're so much like him. So you're basically the same guy. So I get to play both of you guys, and I get to have whatever I want between the two of you, and I'll tell him everything that he needs to hear, and I'll tell you everything that you want to hear, up until you can't handle it anymore. And then I'm going to find 2 new guys that I can play off of each other, so I can feel important and smug and superior, because that's the only way that I know how to actually get and give love. Like, that's, dude, like, block. You'd be wise to block her number and block her on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and set up her emails to go to spam. That's just a bunch of craziness. And no, you don't need to meet the new guy. You don't need to spend time with her. This chick is a time suck. Like, you are shoveling time, life energy at this black hole of a human being. Like, it's not going anywhere. Like, she's all about games. This is how she's getting her ego fed. It's a bunch of nonsense. I wouldn't try too hard to untangle all of that. It's just mind games. It's mind games. you're probably going to be really tempted to text her back and be like, I don't want to meet him. You're playing games. Da, 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 da. She wants that. This is all designed to provoke you into a reaction, either at the restaurant when you meet this guy, which she would be all over him. And then when he gets up to go to the bathroom, then she would be all over you. Don't give her the satisfaction of replying. Like, she's just, stuff is bananas. Like, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's designed to confuse you. It's designed to agitate you. It's designed to be hurtful. It's designed to provoke you. Just block, 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 drive on. Best revenge is a good life. You dodged a bullet with this chick. Like, you don't need anybody even close to this in your life. This is all highly problematic. Red flag city. No, no, no. All right. So, let's see. This is a question from Owl Dad, who says, I'm going through a custody battle with my narcissistic ex-wife. How do I prove in court that she is a narcissist when she can't admit that she is? And how do I go about trying to get her help so she can be a better mother? So, how do you prove in court that she is a narcissist? Your only chance at that would really be to try to get a psychiatric evaluation. More often than not, like, because narcissists can be very manipulative, it's going to be, I think the odds of you getting a diagnosis of that is going to be really slim. If anything, it might come back with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. Most women just don't get diagnosed as being a narcissist. It tends, same with antisocial. Like, a woman can have a lot of the same traits, but it's just this kind of stigma that people have where no, women are highly emotional, therefore they're borderline. And if they're unpredictable, they have, because a lot of these traits overlap, but it's, I don't know if I've ever seen narcissistic personality disorder for a woman. And I work with this stuff day in and day out. It's, if anything, it tends to be diagnosed as borderline, but like, I've met some really highly problematic women that I'm like, oh no, that chick's a sociopath. Like, there's no, like, how is this not even on here? So so you could try to get a psych eval. It's probably not going to work. It's probably going to really upset your ex and be highly problematic. So know that. The other thing too is, how do you try to get her help so she can be a better mother? Most people in general don't want unsolicited parenting advice, right? Especially unsolicited parenting advice from their ex-husband or their ex-wife. Their ex. They don't want unsolicited parenting advice from their ex in general. That's a great way to really send her to the moon and back. There is a fantastic book that I highly recommend that you read. It's called Divorce Poison, and it's by Richard Warshaw. And in that, he goes through basically dealing with the highly manipulative former spouse and kind of what to anticipate and how to do damage control. So this is all about you reclaiming your power and control, knowing what you have control over, which is not her. Like, there's nothing that you can really do, unfortunately, to get her to behave differently. But what you can do is damage control when the kids are at your house. And you can kind of learn to anticipate how she is and kind of play around with different scenarios on how to possibly better handle the situation. That book really, really is, it's fantastic. So you can find out more information about it on Amazon. Divorce Poison. Or you can go to my website. You can read my notes about it. We have a book club. And thriveafterabuse.com, and then go to book club, and you can look up my notes and the discussion from there. So I hope that helps, and I'm so sorry that you're going through this. Support groups can also be helpful as well. If you do a Google search, you can join my support group, but you could also look for support groups for like divorcing a narcissist or co-parenting with a narcissist. There's lots of groups on Facebook. If you do, if for anybody, just kind of FYI, we get this almost every single day in the Facebook group because people don't fully understand Facebook groups. I didn't either. It's not just you. It's like people in general don't understand this. So in Facebook groups, there's different levels of groups. There's open, there's closed, and then there's private. An open group, anybody can see what you're posting. It'll show, I don't know if it shows on your timeline, but they can see what you're posting. A closed group, they can't see what you're posting, but they can see that you're a member of the group. That's very important. So if you don't want anybody to know that you're a member of that group, then you would be best off creating a fake profile and joining Facebook under that fake profile, but just make sure that you make it a real name, you know, like John Smith or Jane Smith or what have you. And then put some real pictures on there. So it looks like a real profile. So the admin for that group will let you in, because what we get, I get, I don't even know, we get at least, like, I don't even know, 300 to 500 requests a day for my Facebook support group. Of that, I probably let in between 200 to 300 people. So I have to we sort through all of these different profiles. If somebody looks problematic, if they have a friend in the group, if they have a profile that doesn't have a lot of related info on it, we don't let them in, because there's a ton of spammers and trolls and flying monkeys and stuff out there. So just something to keep in mind if you're going to be joining a Facebook group. But yeah, there's lots of like website groups and that kind of stuff for this. Oh, that's a good idea. PC Prophecy. People were talking about renting a room on Craigslist. You know, another thought might be staying in a hostel. That can be an affordable way to go. They might even do like long-term rent. So maybe Googling hostel, HOSTEL, in your area, and seeing if you could stay, and if for long-term, if there would be some sort of, you know, break in the price for that. Yes, I like that. Kristen says, Dana, parallel parenting is my best solution, not co-parenting. I love it. I agree completely. And so much of this is just anticipation, just realizing, okay, it is what it is. Ideally, in a perfect world, we would be able to work as a team and co-parent so our children can grow up as happy and healthy and well-adjusted as possible. But if you're dealing with a personality style, it's all about power and control, and they're not capable of working as a team, is really what it is. Like, it's their personality. Like, it's just the way they are, and they're not probably going to change anytime soon. So realizing that co-parenting, working as a team, is probably going to be a struggle and a half, because they just don't care. It's all about them. And you can set rules and boundaries all day long, and they're going to continue. They might follow them when it works for them, but then they're going to break them when it works for them. Like, it's just all about them. And parallel parenting is anticipating all of that and doing the best you can, and realizing what you do and do not have control over, and, you know, just trying to do damage control and trying to keep yourself and your children as safe and sane during all of this as possible. Yeah, Martine, people are asking like about hostels. Yeah, so it's like a concept that's big in Europe. And Martine is saying, yes, a hostel is mostly for traveling youth sharing a room. It's cheap. That's another thing. Here's some other ideas, actually, speaking of which. So hostels in the United States, there are some places that have them. Strange. I mean, it's weird. It's like not that big of a thing here, but they do exist in some areas. So it's worth Googling. Some other ideas, I know around me, there's some like Buddhist monasteries where they rent rooms that are very affordable. They're room and board, and like it's super cheap to stay there. So that might be another option. You could ask people if you're not into that, you could ask people at a church and just let them know your situation and see, can I see if they can put that out to their congregation and say like, oh, this is what I can afford, and I'm willing to do, walk your dog or do lawn work or kind of in exchange for room and board. Yeah, there's also, there's a couple of other, this might be more of like an application process, but I think there's some places where you can volunteer to work on a farm. I forget what that's called. There's like a weird name for that. I forget. But that might be an option too. Seeing if like local farms you could trade work for room and board. Yes, woofing. Thank you, William. Yes, that's exactly what it's called. So, Martine says, I've never had a single room in a hostel. I did. Well, it had 2 bunk beds in it, but it was me and some friends stayed in one. This was years ago when we were in Italy. Everyone is so different. Like some of them are just like a room full of bunk beds. Some of them are. This one had its own bathroom, and it was a lot more private, and and it just depends on like the time of year and all kinds of things. But what I have found with hostels is by and large, the people that are there tend to be really laid back and pretty cool. So like they're there to meet other people. They're there to be friendly. It's kind of, of course, like it's always good to have healthy boundaries and kind of, make sure your stuff's locked up and that kind of stuff. But it can be a great way to just, I don't know, entertaining, like meeting new people. And Martine says, yeah, there are really awesome hostels and there are really creepy, crappy ones. Yes, there was one when I lived in New Mexico. There was one in Cloudcroft, a place called Cloudcroft, New Mexico, and it was so creepy. It was like something out of a horror movie. I never saw anybody there. Like it was just really like weird. Like what is this a front for? Like it just didn't seem even like remotely legit. So yeah, like avoid those places. But places where there's people that seem open and like legit, then go for it. Yeah, Patar says hostels are creepy because of the movies. Yes, don't watch the movie Hostel if you're gonna go stay in. It's like don't even watch it in general. It's terrifying. Don't even watch it. But especially don't watch it if you're gonna go stay in a hostel, because then you'll never sleep and it's awful. Super. I think that was a Quentin Tarantino movie. Super creepy. Okay, yes. Let's see. Let me scroll up. Okay. Oh my gosh, these names. 2002 121 5 MX asks, I just watched the O.J. Simpson documentary. Why did Nicole stay with him? Oh, I think it's like why anybody stays. He was incredibly violent, and they had a long history of domestic violence. I think, I don't know if he'd ever like put her in the hospital, but he had beaten her up several times pretty extensively. People tend to hold on to hope that they're going to change. People tend to be blamed for abuse. The abusive person generally is like, you made me do this. You drove me to this. Had you been a better mother or a partner or cook, or if you had the house cleaned or gave me more sex or, XYZ, then this would not have happened. So really it's all your fault. You should trust me. You shouldn't be questioning me. If I do something, it's because I deserve to do it. It's like that level of entitlement. And so when a person, it's sort of like being in a cult with an abusive cult leader. So a person stays in an abusive relationship generally either because they believe that they do share some blame for the abuse, or they're overwhelmed with the financial part of it. Like, how do you leave? She might have been terrified to leave, thinking, a lot of people stay because they're like, you know what, I am terrified I think he would kill me if I left, or she would kill me if I left, or she or he would hurt the kids if I left, and I don't want to share custody with a monster. So there's lots of different reasons, and I think kind of the overwhelm with the idea of going to court, and here OJ was this very successful, likable. The side that the world knew of him was that he was this very charismatic, likable guy, and not too many people saw that dark side of him. So, and then holding on to hope that this person could change. Even though it's an abusive relationship, for those that are in it, it's still a relationship. And so there's bonds that are formed, there's memories that are made, there's children that are produced, there's these connections that are there. And so it's really hard for a person to fully realize this person's problematic, this relationship's never going to work out, especially when you're lost in that fog of confusion where the good times can be so good, like that whole honeymoon period, and then that slow devalue stage, and then that discard or that explosion stage, and then there's that abuse, and then it's followed by honeymoon stage. And so when you're in that, it's sort of like, well, now every time you get around to that honeymoon stage, it's like, oh, we've really turned a corner. This person seems to really understand. They're promising never to do this again. Now they're promising to go to rehab or church or therapy, or they said that they were sorry. They've never said that they were sorry before. Or, there's flowers and candy and calling your family, calling your friends, calling you, promising to make things work, using religion and guilt and shame and blame and threats and on to keep a person in it, and it can just really wear somebody out. So yeah. Let's see here. $1 Million listing says, every time we have been through this cycle, I have been the one to reach back out to him. Does that mean he's not hoovering or a narcissist? Then it's the blaming, then it's the love bombing, then it's the silent treatment. So not all narcissistic people hoover, and especially if you're the one that's reaching back out to him. And so he might realize this is the dance that we do. We break up, right? I do something, I treat her like garbage, and then we break up, and then I know within 3 to 6 months, she's going to text me or call me. So I'm just going to wait for that. And in the meantime, they tend to move on, because this is how they get their esteem needs met. So they have this continual pipeline of people that they go to, that they continue to use and abuse and exploit. And so if you're not in the picture, then somebody else is. And it might not be necessarily like another girlfriend or a romantic partner, but there's other people, whether it's coworkers or neighbors or kind of whoever. It's just, they don't attach to people like normal people do. So, this is just kind of what they do. So, he's not hoovering because he doesn't need to, because you're the one that's reaching back out to him. Then, and what you're describing, so then you reach out to him and then it's possibly blaming, like, well, oh, I'll let you date me again. I'll let you have sex with me again, but it's all your fault. You're difficult. Your problem. You're hard to love, right? It's this kind of this blame of like, you're so crazy. You're so emotional. You're so abusive. I don't know why I put up with you. Nobody else would put up with you except for me. I hope you see that. I hope you see how lucky you have it, right? It's a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, are you gonna quit being so crazy now? Maybe this time we can actually have a real relationship because you're crazy. It's that constant like grinding down of that other person and that punishment. So silent treatment, it's a grooming behavior. It's actually a form, interestingly enough, it's a form of verbal abuse. And it's because it's withholding. It's that withholding of communication. And it's designed to punish a person. It's designed to get power and control over somebody else, to say, see, this is how you don't question me about anything that I do or say. Because if you do, I'm going to freeze you out and I'm not going to talk to you. And of course, for those of us that have experienced silent treatment, it's awful. It's like you're like a sheet twisting in the wind. And you're wondering, are they going to reopen up contact? And what does this mean? And this is so, it's so awful. And it's designed to feel that way. It's designed to say, don't you do this again, or this is what's going to happen to you. So, once you see the behavior for what it is, it's really hard to unsee it. So once you can see it as this is abusive behavior, and they're not going to change, and it's going to be up to you to stop the insanity, to hop off the merry-go-round cycle of all of this. So any type of abuse, really, frankly, it needs to be a deal breaker. It's not worth holding on to hope that a person can change. This is like some major deep-seated stuff that's way beyond what's workable. I mean, it's problematic. So emotional, and there's 7 different types of abuse, right? So you've got verbal abuse, you've got emotional abuse, and psychological abuse, and financial abuse, and spiritual abuse, and sexual abuse, and physical abuse. So abuse comes in many different ways, and oftentimes it can be so subtle that it can be hard to it takes a while for a person to really tell, like, are these the normal highs and lows of a problematic relationship, or is this an abusive relationship? So I need to do a video on more like specifics of each of the different types of abuse, but if you Google the 7 different types and can get examples, it can be really helpful. There's also a fantastic book out there. This was a book club book, probably about a year or so ago. I have notes on my website. It's a book called The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans. And oh boy, it's just fantastic. Just fantastic. And she just does a great job of really explaining like what verbal abuse is and all the different ways that it goes down. And again, like once you see it, you're like, oh yeah, okay. Yep, she's totally right. And I think she lists out like 16 different main ways that verbal abuse, that a person goes about trying to gain power and control over others through verbal abuse. And she uses examples that are both like covert and overt, which is, I think, very helpful. So something to check out. You can find out more information about the book club and about that book on my website, thriveafterabuse.com. and go to book club. And again, that's called The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans. Yes. Patar says, it is hard to work and support yourself while you're struggling with PTSD. Yes, absolutely. I agree completely. I think if a person is, if you're struggling with PTSD, then, you know, and it's hard, right? Because like there's life and there's these responsibilities of life, like a job and trying to juggle all these things. And it's so incredibly hard to do if a person is struggling with PTSD. If you can make yourself a priority as much as possible, and there's a couple of different therapies that have been shown to be very effective with that. EMDR is one of them. EFT is another. And those people that have gone through it and different therapists that I've known that do those therapies speak very, very highly of them. And a person can have pretty significant results within like 1 to 3 visits. So it's something like I think kind of worth checking out. Yes. And Kristen recommends the PTSD workbook. I have not, I've heard you're this like second or third person. I need to make a note of this and look into that, because I've heard many good things about that book and I haven't read it. Oh, that's interesting. Cassandra says, researchers have added another form of abuse, digital abuse. It's online harassment. Isn't that interesting? That's a first for me. Digital abuse makes total sense. They, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there's been 2 deaths on Facebook lately with people pushing other people into suicide. And then what's even more awful about that, encouraging them to live stream their suicide. So awful, awful, awful stuff. And it's easy, it's there's just some really sick people out there. Hey, Postmodern is here. Hello. Diane says, Dana, can The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans be the next book club book? I have books scheduled up into May, I think. But that's not to say I can't do a video on it. I don't know. Lucy is my partner in crime when it comes to book club stuff. We'll have to run it past her and see if that would be something that she would want to redo as well. So, and Lucy, I'm so sorry. The book club this last time, we had major technology issues and we weren't able to have our chat. So Lucy, I still need to get a hold of you so we can figure out if we're going to discuss the book one-on-one or like what we're going to do with that. But let me just tell you, the nonstop technology issues. I had major issues with my Facebook page. I was banned from Facebook. They just lifted the ban like today, maybe 3 hours ago. So I was banned from Facebook for, I don't even know, like 3 or 4 days. I couldn't access anything. Couldn't get into my group. I thought it was just from my page. So, and this was like an old thing from a gal who was helping me with my Facebook page. And it was just this like, things that I didn't even know were going on that were going on. It was just a mess. So I get this nasty gram from Facebook. I thought I was banned from my page. It wasn't my page. It was all of Facebook. Couldn't access, I don't even deal with my personal profile anymore, but I couldn't access my group. And so my poor moderators were doing everything, and like it just went on and on. So then after that happened, my website had gotten hacked, and actually I'm not sure if I think it got hacked. I have a WordPress site, and then it wouldn't let me access the back end of my website, and it was due to some plugin, but I didn't even ever install this plugin, and so it was just this freaking, I had to figure that out, and then I got that figured out, and then my other admin from my website group was like, Dana, we're getting all of this spam, you need to update the forum. So trying to figure that out, and then having podcast issues with I don't even, like ID3 tags and condensing MP3 files, all of this stuff I never thought in a million years I would ever need to know or would want to know or be in a position to actually have to figure out. And so it was just like one thing after another, all for like the past 4 or 5 days. It's been frustrating. So, let's see, what else was I going to say about all of that? Oh, before I forget, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ryan. Are you guys familiar with Ryan? The gal. It's one of my the guy was one of my admins in my support group. So, okay, Ryan has a channel. It's called Ryan Liberty, and he does a fantastic job about all kinds of videos having to do with mental health. Yes, Ryan Liberty. So, if you're familiar with him, check out his channel. I think it's fantastic. I think he's fantastic, and just wanting to give him a plug because he deserves it. He works so hard on his channel, and he makes these amazing videos, and it's awesome. So spread the word. Ryan Liberty, that's his name. That's his channel. He does a really great job. Just give him some love. Yes, humanizing mental health. Thank you. Yes, that's what he is all about, and he does such a great job with that. Somebody asked, why was I banned? Was I banned from Facebook for digital abuse? No. I had a gal who was helping me make memes for Facebook and was putting them on my Facebook page. It's as much my fault and my responsibility as anything else. It's just it's the learning curve. Like, we didn't know what we didn't know. So we were getting these memes from the internet. Some of them have, like, have you ever seen, like, if you're on Instagram, it's probably a better example of that, or Pinterest. Like, you'll see memes, but they don't give anybody credit. And they'll just have like a website at the bottom, but it may not even be, like, it might just be like a quote or words. So she was remaking some of these and not giving the proper credit, either because the proper credit was never on the meme that she was originally remaking, or what. I don't even know. So anyways, so she had remade a handful of these and was posting them, and it turns out they were direct quotes from this one author. And so this somehow this gal came across them and was understandably very upset. Well, I didn't realize this was going on, and so this gal had been trying to message me through Facebook, but I get like hundreds of messages a day. So I wasn't even seeing her messages. I had no idea. So like Oh, I feel bad. I feel bad for her because I can totally appreciate where she's coming from. So like, I'm sure all of his frustrations building up. Like, why is this chick like not responding to my messages? Why is she stealing my content? Why is she doing all of this? And here I have like no idea this is going on. So, and of course these memes keep getting reposted. So I'm sure she's getting like more and more upset by this, right? So then she filed a copyright violation on like, I don't know, two or three of them, and then Facebook was like, sent me the nasty gram of, and they deleted them, thankfully, and then was like, we're putting you in timeout. No, 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 don't do this again. And so, but then they like put me in timeout, but I couldn't get into my Facebook page to see if they had been posted previously, to go in and delete them. And anyways, the gal and I, she's very nice. She was very understanding. I emailed her. I explained that I'm not a big jerk face, that I should have been supervising this gal better. I didn't know what I didn't know. She didn't know what she didn't know. It was not malicious. It wasn't intentional. So, yeah. Yeah. Chaos. Chaos ensues. Yeah. So, you live and you learn. That's all any of us can do. So Martine says, we can help you get original lines for the memes. Yeah, that would be awesome. We just started doing a series of memes, was it last week, called I Knew I Needed to Leave When? And it's people that have answered that question seriously. It was like their aha moment of, it was when he got somebody else pregnant, or when she got pregnant and it wasn't by me, or when she wanted me to meet her husband, or when he beat me up and I wound up in the hospital, or was whatever a person's aha moment was. Really interesting, I think very eye-opening and helpful for other people to hear. It's always helpful, I think, to hear from other people that have gone through this, because we all tell all of our experiences. It's all different versions of the same story. So it's just helpful to talk to other people that have been through that. Yeah, Little Miss says, I knew I needed to leave when I found out he was lying about cancer. Kevin says, I knew I needed to leave when her head spun around and she vomited pea soup. Yeah, not good. Not a good one. Yeah, I knew I needed to leave and not look back after I talked to his ex-wife, and she had the exact same experience. And she flat out told me, she said, run. And she had no reason to lie to me. They had been divorced for a long time. She lived in another state. That was my moment of like, this is really not fixable. There was a handful of moments, but that was one of them. Mine also tried the cancer thing too. Cassandra said, I wonder how revenge porn sites also try to control victims. Side note, I took your advice and started listening to Patricia Evans' audiobooks. I found out she was recommended by Oprah. I recently found out the same thing. I did not know that either. I think she was on there like a while ago. And I will say with Patricia Evans, I really like her work to a point. It really does not, all bets are off when you're dealing with a person who is physically aggressive or abusive or intimidating. Because some of her stuff in there, she talks about confronting them or continually questioning them. And I think that kind of an approach could get a person potentially killed. So I wouldn't be confronting a person who's a raging bull. I would just get out of their way. But other than that, I think most all of her stuff is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, revenge porn, a lot of states are making it illegal. Bear asks, hey Dana, EMDR therapy, could you tell me more? So my understanding of EMDR, and I haven't gone through it, is, what does it stand for? Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, I believe. And the concept is you focus on a point and they have you go back and forth, and it's similar to, I think this is my understanding, I could be off, but so correct me if I am. You're holding on to an emotion that you have and you're thinking about this emotion, and then the eye movement helps to somehow like almost like unclog the brain. So it's like this concept that this emotion is just being trapped in some area, and so it helps to kind of move it to where it's able to move from like your active memory to like your more like passive memory, or your long-term storage area, instead of being at the forefront of your brain. It's not, that's a good question. William asks, is hypnosis with the clock a type of EMDR? Maybe in a way, except the difference is they don't have you hold on to the emotion and kind of like try to reprocess it. I don't know. I would be curious to go through a session and just see. See if I can let me video it. That would be kind of fun. Earth to Janet says, hey, do you read memoirs on your book club? I just read The Secret Life of Captain X, My Life with a Psychopathic Pilot. I also read My Sociopath. Both of those were excellent reads. We haven't read any memoirs yet, but I would be totally open to that. Let me write this down. And My Sociopath. Bear says, I'm reading a book, Getting Past Your Past. It's by the doctor who discovered it. Is it really as effective as she claims? Is it EFT? I've heard we were just talking about this, and I forget who it was. There's somebody in the support group that was talking about EFT and kind of these outrageous claims by EFT therapists. And this other guy who also claimed to have developed it, he is a psychiatrist, and he was saying, he's like, this is phenomenal, and he's like, and it works within like 15 minutes as far as like processing trauma. I don't know the therapist. I have a friend of mine who's a therapist who really she swears by EFT, and has had several patients referred to her that for trauma that haven't shown any other improvement with any other type of therapy, and within a few sessions they've been able to have amazing results. So it's worth trying. EFT too, you don't need to have, according to, all these different people claim to have developed it, but kind of from what I understand, you don't necessarily need to have a therapist do it. It's because it's not talk therapy. It's not anything other than like you holding on to this emotion and then like tapping these different pressure points, like, to release this emotional block. It would be interesting. You can go on YouTube and like look up EFT, and there's quite a few videos that will walk a person through it and see. If you do end up doing that, let me know. Like, let me know if you get any results from that. Okay. Yeah. Cassandra says, yeah, I would agree. I would stay clear when a narcissist is raging, no confrontation. I felt so happy when I had my locks changed. It meant I could begin recovery. Totally. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So lots of interesting conversation here. Sorry, it's probably boring for anybody that's watching this later. I'm trying to read and catch up with the chat. Jamie says, this might be too much information, but I'm scared because he has naked pictures of me. Can he get into trouble if he did anything with them? I've been offered, okay. I don't want this to come back and bite me. So it depends on the state that you're in, and I don't blame you. So this is another, a lot of people struggle with that, just kind of FYI, where they're like, oh my God, this person is the smear campaign that they're doing, and they're just trying to really discredit me, and they're doing all of these things, and this is just awful, and it's, you know, they're going to try to just really destroy my reputation and cause all kinds of damage in my life. Just kind of from here on out, I think it's important for people, if you are going to send sexy pictures of yourself, don't put your face in it. It's kind of a, you know, for the future, for this very reason, because a lot of times this kind of stuff does happen. You get this, a crazy ex or a bitter and jaded ex, and they can start sending pictures around. They can post them on the internet, these kinds of things. If that does happen, if he does post them on wherever, you can contact that website and demand that they be taken down. And that might be something, if it does become a problem, to contact an attorney, and to see, like, what can you do to get these images taken down. Generally, most of the time, different websites and stuff are pretty quick to get that kind of stuff taken down, because they don't want legal issues either. Yeah, she says, if I do get this show, he would do it just because he's obsessed with being famous. I hear you, and I am like a Z-list celebrity, so I can only imagine. But I've got a similar situation, not with nude photos, but with similar types of videos that this person has been making and trying to provoke and do all kinds of stuff. And it's like, I thought this was long gone, and it's been a year, and now this person's coming back and trying to do stuff, and it is. It's all to get onto my radar, and it's to get under my skin, and it's to try to kind of ride that train of freaking like Z-list YouTube celebrity status. Like, I don't know, it's just sad is what it is. So I can only imagine if you are doing a like a TV show on a anything that's above a Z-list YouTube celebrity. Like, I can only imagine what kind of flag that would wave for them. Ridiculous. Diane says, Dana, if you are a person of goodwill, caring, loving, genuine, and kind, why does a narcissist try to destroy that? So it's because those are all traits that they view as a weakness. And narcissists, they've developed this false self as a defense mechanism. This is kind of the theory behind it. That's a defense mechanism for them. So they don't want, it's a way to protect themselves. So they've really turned off that empathy, that emotion, that remorse, that those traits, you know, goodwill, kindness, compassion, sincerity, because they view that as weakness, as potentially making them vulnerable, and they fear being vulnerable. And this is why they exploit other people's vulnerabilities. And this is also why they tend to find a target and then they systematically work towards destroying them. It's just all of this dysfunction and pathology inside of them, and that's how it comes out. And that's it's who they are, and it's what they do. And it makes them feel smug and superior and better about themselves. Some people, you know, they get their self-esteem needs met by volunteering or by, I don't know, like, you know, running a marathon or, you know, cooking a good meal or, you know, dressing stylish or what have you. They get their needs met in those kinds of ways, or through other like loving relationships with other people. They feel really they really enjoy being a good parent or a good friend or a good sibling or what have you. But narcissists, they just don't have that. It's all about them. It's all about their ego is really what it is. They're so driven by their ego that there is no authentic self there. There's just this ego. And it's this underdeveloped, unhealthily developed ego, to where there's this emotional maturity that's that of, you know, a child or maybe even a teenager, and it kind of just stops. And that's where it's so much of like the similar problematic behavior that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe an adult is acting like this. Like, this is so wild. And they're not emotionally available or emotionally mature for probably a wide variety of reasons. So, you know, it just kind of goes back to like, we can't change them, only they can work towards changing them. But that's, you know, change is never easy for any of us. And it's something that we would all need to, you know, that they would need to work on. But if we were to change anything about ourselves too, like, you have a person, whenever you want to change, you have to actually consistently, consciously work on it, like every single day. Especially when you're talking like behavior traits. Like, it's different if you're talking about like alcoholism, right? Where you're focused on just not drinking. It's not that alcoholism is easy to overcome by any stretch, but it's like one thing that you're focused on. With a narcissist, it's so interwoven into a person's person. It's their mindset. It's how they relate to other worlds, how they relate to themselves. It's their self-identity. It's how they get their self-esteem. There's just so much more to it that it's, you know, personal growth. It takes time and it's difficult. It's not as easy as just flipping a switch and deciding to like not try to destroy another human being. Like, as wild as that might sound, everybody does, all the behaviors, all of the actions we take are designed to meet some sort of need. And for better or for worse. And so it's not just the behavior, it's what's driving that behavior. That's the bigger issue. That's what takes longer to repair and fix and all that stuff. Okay. Jamie asks, what is the difference between like an overt narcissist, a covert narcissist, a cerebral narcissist, etc.? So overt means anything that's outright. So overt, there's like an overt narcissist or overt abuse, more like outright abuse. So when people talk about overt narcissists, they're generally referring to like that guy, right? Or like that girl, like that really over the top, that person, like Kanye West, right? Like they're just so full of themselves. You're just like, oh geez, dude. I mean, it's just so like exhausting and ridiculous. Like that guy. That's an overt narcissist. Okay. Covert narcissist is the exact opposite. They tend to be very charming, very likable, they can be very humble. They can be they are the wolves in sheep's clothing. So the overt narcissist, they're grandiose, they're arrogant, they brag, they talk all about themselves. They're grandiose. It's just, like, when I think of an overt narcissist, I think of a guy with like a spray tan and like lots of gold jewelry, and he's just flashy and trying to impress, and he's got the car and the whole, just, he thinks he's Joe Cool, but I think a lot of other people are like, that guy's trying too hard. It just reeks of insecurity, but he doesn't see that, right? So coverts tend to be the exact opposite, and they're very charming. They oftentimes come across as like prince or princess charming. Really, with a lot of like the love bombing, that kind of stuff, doing and saying all of the right things at first. This is why time is so important, because anybody can be on their best behavior at first. Cerebral narcissist is one that really gets their ego needs met through coming across as intellectually superior. Oftentimes they are incredibly intelligent. They they may or may not have like advanced degrees, or they may claim that they have advanced degrees, but they might have the intellect to back it up. So they tend to cerebral narcissists tend to be, I don't know, just that's how they kind of get through in life. It's all about intellect. Somatic narcissists are all about their body. So they get their ego needs met through their body. These are the people that work out all the time. And of course, not that everybody that works out at the gym is a somatic narcissist, and not everybody that has an advanced degree is a cerebral narcissist, right? But it's like subcategories of narcissists and how they go about getting their ego needs met. So somatic ones tend to be very hypersexual. These are the ones that have a lot of, what would probably fall under the category of like sex addiction. So like a lot of porn, a lot of multiple partners of cheating. Sex is a weapon for them. They tend to be very good in bed. Sometimes they can be very good in bed. Sometimes they can just be hypersexual, where it's just, you're having sex nonstop, like you're not getting out of bed all weekend long. Partners of somatic narcissists over time, at first it can feel really flattering to be that desired, but then over time it's that feeling of, I feel like this person is just, there's no real intimacy, like there's no real connection there. I feel like I'm being used for them to masturbate with, or like that they're putting on a show at being this amazing lover to get this feedback so I can tell them how much of an amazing lover they are. Like you kind of over time start feeling like, even though we're having all this sex, maybe they're even saying like, oh, this is making love, I'm so in love with you, and they're just so touchy-feely, and it can seem as affectionate. Over time it starts like, this is weird. So there's somatic, then there's the vulnerable narcissist, which some people talk about in terms of like covert narcissism, which may or may not go hand in hand with that. Vulnerable narcissists from my experience, have been those that come across as, it's weird. The vulnerable narcissists that I've come across have been overt narcissists. They've been very like grandiose or arrogant or like kind of outwardly problematic. But then that vulnerable side shows where you're like, I feel like I'm talking to a scared, abused child, like a baby bird with a broken wing. Like there's something about them that you see how fragile they really are, that any criticism whatsoever just makes them go into emotional collapse. And so they'll oftentimes talk about their hopes and dreams and goals at a very grandiose level. But if somebody criticizes them, they just crumple. Altruistic narcissists are ones that would probably, they'd be more under the covert category. They're the ones that are like the youth ministers, or the ones that volunteer, or that tend to come across as like really, really great people. So it's like, that's the mask they normally wear. But then the other side of them is that they're lying, cheating, stealing, siphoning funds, embezzling. I mean, they're just like all kinds of bad behavior. Their front is that of, I'm this really great person. Let's see if I'm trying to think if there's any other, there's probably other subtypes, but those are the main ones that come to mind. None of that stuff is in the DSM. So if you were to go to a therapist and say, yes, I was involved with cerebral narcissist, they would have no idea what you were talking about. Or if you were to talk about, somatic overt narcissist or a covert narcissist, like by and large, like DSM like qualifications for narcissism is really vague, and people tend to think it's more of like the overt narcissist. Like people are thinking, okay, for that person to be a narcissist, they need to lack empathy. They need to lack remorse. They need to be really braggadocio. They need to be grandiose. Oh, delusional narcissists. That's another subcategory, which I think is fascinating. They're the ones that are like delusional, like way over the top, talking about, they just freaking lie. Like, but I think they believe their own lies. Like they're just crazy. It's talking about how they're reincarnations of Cleopatra, or that they are, they were a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, or that they are, it's just these totally grandiose delusions about who they are. It's really wild. A lot of cult leaders would fall under that category of like delusional, like a UFO is going to come down, that they're the savior of the world, and that these people are, if you can just follow them and do all of these special rites and rituals, that you can also get aboard the spaceship and travel to outer space. And it's just these wild delusions about what's going on and their role in things. Kristen says, with a therapist, it's best to just describe behaviors. So much of this terminology it's not known. This is kind of survivor terminology, like flying monkeys and hoovering, and the different types of narcissistic abuse, even though that's a real term that was coined by Alice Miller a long time ago. That's where that comes from. But that's not, I don't think that's in the DSM. So any of these words, fleas. Oh gosh, what are some more? Just lots and lots of terms. Even basic terms like codependency, concepts like that, not that always applies to relationships with narcissistic abuse, but even that I think is, I'm just, oh my God, so blown away by how many therapists there are out there that are forever working towards a solution, and they cannot, like, they totally mistake like commitment and codependency all the time. And it's like, wow. I mean, really? Wow. Okay. But like, this stuff's not, it's not taught at the level that it needs to be taught. It's one of those things, like, until you go through it and you spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours researching it, you have no idea. Like, how would anybody know? I think it's sort of like getting diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. Like, doctors and stuff, they kind of know, but once you start talking to other people that have that type of cancer, you just learn like so much more about it that, like, most healthcare professionals they just don't know, because they don't have it. So Diane asks, Dana, for every partner they hook up with, do they eventually see them for who they truly are? Like, the person, their target? Not always. If that's what you mean, then no, not always. It depends. It depends on how aware of their problematic behavior they are. So some, like, some will always be the same person. Like, they can't hide their level of dysfunction. Like, that just rears its head about 3 weeks into every single relationship, right? And it just gets progressively, they like, like, they can't hide it. Some of them can. And this is more of like the psychopath or sociopathic, psychopathic side, where they can, and they can be, but it's all methodical. It's all about playing a game. So they can go to one person and it's a series of short-lived relationships. They'll go to one person, systematically destroy them, then go to the other person, and then have this really fairy tale relationship that has to come to an end for some sort of reason, and then the next person systematically destroy them, and then the next person have a really great, relationship with them, kind of a thing. And the reason they have a really great relationship with them is so it helps to kind of further their whole story that they're actually a really great person, because they're very systematic in who they're targeting and who they're destroying. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. It's all in their mind. So who knows what's driving that? It could be in their mind, they're targeting, they want to systematically destroy single mothers because their mother was a single mother. Or they could decide, I'm not going to destroy single mothers because my mom was a single mother. And so then they spare them. I mean, like, it's seriously all within their own head. But that, I think, is kind of rare, that a person that they do. I've only encountered that and even really heard about that like once. So I think it's a lot more frequent that they have the same type of personality problems everywhere they go, because that's just how they are. Martine says, can you address the silent treatment sometime, and when it is not malicious, but just a person shutting down or being shy for another reason? So yeah, so a lot of people do silent treatment, and they don't mean for it to be abusive. They might just not know how to react to a situation. But what a person can do in that situation is say, like, I really need time to cool down. And so I don't want to say anything I'm going to regret, or I'm just really angry. I'm just really angry and I can't talk about this. So I love you, or I care about you. Can we talk about this tonight? Or can we talk about this tomorrow? Giving a person a time frame doesn't make it silent treatment anymore. Because it lets the person know, I care about you, I'm really upset, or I'm just really not ready to talk about stuff, or whatever's going on. I'm really overwhelmed, what have you, but I'll talk to you about it at this day and this time. And then it gives the other person a sense of relief of, okay, then they're not just like twisting in the wind. So that's a way to get around that, because some people do just shut down. If they have stuff go on in their life and they're like, you know what, I'm just really overwhelmed with everything right now. I just don't want to talk. It's not you, it's me. And, you know, I'll touch base with you like on Saturday, you know. But to just not say anything to anybody and then they're concerned, you know, that's definitely not ideal. Yeah, Kristen's saying it can be a freeze state, that disassociating. Yes, I agree. So SK says, do they know that they are eventually going to hurt the person when they go into a relationship? I think that's a good question. I think it depends. It depends on their level of self-awareness. There's been some that I've come across who I truly don't think that they realized. I really think that they believed that they did no wrong. Like they just did not understand why people weren't staying in their life, and like there's just that like total lack of accountability and awareness as to their behavior. And I really think that they believed it. Like they just did not get it. Like they did like totally denied it. Like they just didn't get it at all. So I think some do realize, you know, if they're like, oh, I really have issues with women or with, you know, kind of or with men or whatever, and to them it's just all a game, then I think maybe there is some sort of level of acknowledgement that, yeah, they're just gonna try to destroy this person. It's on a spectrum, and it's just really hard to say kind of what they're thinking and what's going on. So, okay guys, I gotta get to bed. So it's been a great chat. Thank you so much for joining me. And I really appreciate it. So please join us next week, Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you guys get a chance, please go over to Ryan Liberty's YouTube channel and subscribe and just send him some love, because he's been working really hard on stuff. And let's see what else. And if you haven't already checked out the podcast, please do so. It's Thrive After Abuse. And would really appreciate any feedback you have on it. I'm going to start putting the live streams up on it as well as soon as I can figure out how to compress an MP3 file. So with that said, you guys have a fantastic night. Have a fantastic rest of your week. I will see you next Wednesday. Take care. Lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye.